The race for number 10 comes down to two, as Sunak and Truss make it to the final round.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 21st of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Well, wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, nice to have you on board. And here's what's leading our news this morning.
The former Chancellor Rishi Sunak and the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss are through to the final round of the Conservative leadership election. The two will go head-to-head in an attempt to win over the party membership.
An inquiry has been launched by the Cabinet Office into claims the civil service leaked stories to damage Penny Mordaunt. It comes after papers drawn up by civil service were published in the Sunday Times.
Train journeys are expected to be disrupted again today due to repairs taking place on railway tracks in the wake of this week's unprecedented heatwave. The record high temperatures caused the steel tracks to buckle, leading to mass delays and cancellations.
That's funny talking about, it's not funny, it's not funny, it's strange, is what I mean. I'm sitting shivering here in the studio today.
Bit chilly, isn't it?
And I'm always, as you say to me, Eamonn, you are hot stuff. and yet, feel I'm freezing my hands.
Freezing, oh dear.
You're colder.
I know, well, I'm always cold. I told you I'm a reptile. Wouldn't make that face.
Well, I've seen your tongue, I know. You can join any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk. I mean, where has all the heat gone?
I don't know.
Or is it just
Left
in here?
The dome must have burst.
That was a meteorological phenomenon.
Yeah,
the
thanks
dome.
for explaining that
It's
to
a
me.
big blob of hot air over the country.
Just to say, you can also tweet us at GB News. And may I say, yesterday, we had so many emails all through the programme. And this week, we've had more than ever. And it's also been reflected in our viewing and listening figures. We've got record numbers this week, and that's all down to you. So thank you so much for tuning in to us.
You've got to feel sorry for the mainstream media, though, don't you?
We're coming for them.
Everybody's switching off, not watching.
And that's why we've got Liz Truss on the programme this morning.
Liz Truss, 8:30 this morning, right? Only here on GB News. OK. Now, even more important than Liz Truss.
We're going to be announcing our first ever People's Champion this morning. Really, really excited about this.
Your People's Champion.
Yeah. And don't forget, if you want to include somebody you know in this, send in your nominations, but tune in at 6:45 for the crowning of our first ever People's Champion.
Crowning. That's good. That's exactly right. So that's the first of many, hopefully. OK, so Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss will now go head-to-head in the contest to become the next Prime Minister.
Yes, it comes after Penny Mordaunt was eliminated from the race after receiving the fewest votes in that final MP's ballot.
So, what happens next? Let's go to Paul Hawkins. He explains.
The numbers of votes cast for each candidate is as follows. Mordaunt, 105. Sunak, 137. Truss, 113. Therefore, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss will be the candidates going forward to a final ballot of Conservative Party members.
Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will slug it out to be the next Conservative leader and your Prime Minister. It's the final round of voting, and now it goes to the party members, not just the MPs. Over the next 6 weeks, expect lots of campaigning, interviews, several hustings, and at least one televised debate. And before you think about becoming a member to get a vote, don't bother. You can only vote if you've been a member for 3 months. If that's you, then from August the 1st, you'll start to receive a ballot pack with instructions on how to vote, either by post or online. The recommended way, which also uses special codes to make sure the vote is secure. If you're on holiday, don't worry. The party says you can apply for an email to be sent to you with the codes so you can apply online. So how many Conservative members are there? Well, the official number isn't known, but at the last leadership election in 2019, there were around 160,000 members. Insiders say that number is likely to have grown a bit, but it'll still be less than 0.5% of the electorate deciding who the next PM is. They've got until 5 p.m. on Friday, the 2nd of September to vote. The winner, their party leader, and the UK's next Prime Minister will be announced on Monday, the 5th of September.
Yeah, it is all happening. Let's get the analysis now from Conservative home William Atkinson here this morning with that. Right, yeah, that's your final two. What do you think, William?
Well, I think after all of the debate and discussion about various candidates who've been outside the cabinet, have only ever held ministerial positions, etc., we've ended up with the two people who are expected to be the front runners for months now, probably since about this time last year. Now, Rishi Sunak, up until recently the Chancellor, Liz Truss, still the Foreign Secretary, are both very experienced candidates. They've both got experience, obviously, in some of the highest and most important jobs in government. And I think it's rather reassuring, of course, as we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, the ongoing war in Ukraine and all the rest, that whoever we have in number 10 from September will at least be experienced in that respect.
Why do you say whoever's going to be in number 10? We all know who it's going to be. I mean, it's quite clear now that she's got through to the final two. Our Prime Minister, as of September the 6th, will be Liz Truss.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that's definitely the case. We're very used to, here at Con Home, making the political weather when it comes to these sort of things with our surveys that we do every month. But also in the last week, we've done two separate leadership surveys, which first of all had Penny Mordaunt out in front and then Kemi Badenoch out in front. But more interesting, perhaps, than those were the various matchups between the various different candidates. And they've shown a huge amount of movement. So Rishi Sunak, who was originally considered a no-hoper when put up against most other leading candidates, has closed the gap on Penny Mordaunt, both Penny Mordaunt and indeed, more importantly now, Liz Truss, by quite a significant margin in the last few.
What do you think, William, or do you have a view on the process where you have the parliamentary party putting before the party membership the people who they think are best, and then you have 200,000 or so people who are going to decide on all of this? What do you think of that system?
Well, I think it's a relatively effective system, and I would say that only because the few academic studies that have been done into the sort of differences in results that you get from having elections just done between MPs versus the results you'd get having leadership elections with wider members suggests that the results are broadly similar. And also what's quite interesting is that MPs, something that we don't actually, I think, make enough of an issue of, tend to have views which are rather out of line with those of the majority of voters. So, for example, Tory MPs are usually more socially and economically liberal. So actually, Tory members tend to have views on both economics and social issues which are closer to the average voter, which is quite useful for finding.
That being said, if Liz Truss does win, which, as I say, is not a foregone conclusion, but it looks likely, she still needs to have the support of her parliamentary party in order to govern. And she can't alienate them in the next few weeks with any of the policies that she's espousing to try and win over the membership.
Well, yes. So I think the previous Tory leadership contest, this perhaps resembles the closest, is that in 2001, where Kenneth Clarke and Ian Duncan Smith ended up going to the membership. And Ian Duncan Smith very much the choice of the party's right, Kenneth Clarke the choice of the party's centre. Neither had a sort of commanding lead over MPs. But Ian Duncan Smith, the candidate who came second amongst MPs, ended up as the Tory leader. And his leadership was wrapped from the start by the fact that a majority of his MPs didn't actually support him. So, of course, that would be a problem for Liz Truss if she became Prime Minister and then wasn't able to actually command the support of her own MPs.
What I think is a problem is news organisations, and I now see herself included, taking pictures, photographs and video of Liz Truss's front door, Rishi Sunak's front door, where they are. I think it's a terrible breach of privacy and a terrible security lapse, and I hope we at GB News stop the practice because it goes on everywhere else. And
well, the only thing I would say is they don't need to worry for long because they'll be moving house once they're elected Prime
one
Minister.
Of them will. One of them will.
Their address will be rather famous there.
We're moving house now. We're going to say hello, good morning to GB News viewer and listener, Penny Cole. And Penny, you are in Watlington.
Oh, I love Watlington.
In Oxfordshire.
Good morning.
Very nice to see you.
Good morning.
Hello. Well, Penny, there we are. We're sitting talking to William here about the two candidates. We are talking to you because you are a Conservative. You're a Conservative member, yes?
Yes, and my husband.
And your husband. So what way do you think you and your husband agreed on who you want to be as next leader of the party and Prime Minister?
Kemi Badenoch.
Oh, dear.
Oh, well, I hate to tell you. Yeah.
Well, you didn't say Boris, because a lot of people who aren't happy with the final two have also said Boris to us, so...
Well, if we can't have Boris, I'd like Kemi.
Well, you can't have Kemi.
No.
Who are you going to choose, then?
I don't know. I'll wait to see what Liz Truss says later, but I'm very disillusioned with both of them.
Interesting. And why is that, then? What is it that turns you off about both the final two?
I don't think Rishi Sunak's got a handle on how ordinary people are feeling in these difficult times. He's offered a small amount of money to help them through. But what about when all the other bills come in? I mean, they are really, really going to struggle. And Liz Truss just doesn't float my boat. I just can't warm to her. So.
Personality thing with Liz Truss, because, I mean, we've got her on the programme at 8:30. One of the things we will ask her is about the admission she made on Sunday night when she said, I might not be the most polished candidate. And do you think that's actually going to be a problem for her, perhaps not with the membership, but perhaps when it comes to a general election?
I think the leader needs a good personality. We had a wonderful personality in Margaret Thatcher and one in Boris, but I can't see it with Liz Truss and how she's going to cope at the decision box against Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. I just do not know. I might be proved wrong. I hope I am.
Well, you see, that is the big point. And we were talking about the selection process, Penny. Do you think that it should have gone to the membership as to who the leader should be, as opposed to the parliamentary party?
I think so. There's too much infighting. There's too much jostling for position. And I think the membership have got a much better handle on how the general public feel. Everybody I've spoken to, be they a Conservative Party member or not, all felt that Kemi Badenoch was the best option out of the race.
Yet didn't get there. Let's get William's take on that, Penny, as to why that is. I mean, there you hear a member of the Conservative Party and her husband as well, and they're saying, look, well, the person that was obvious to her and her friends didn't make it.
Well, I think you've got to balance out the two sort of competing interests from the MPs and the members. I think certainly, as Penny rightly points out, the members are perhaps in a better place to understand what the general public want from the leader of the party. But I think that's especially useful when you're in opposition. The difference, of course, is that we are in government. We are in government in a time of various different crises, and MPs are probably the ones best able to judge an individual's actually calibre.
What Penny is saying, and Penny represents the general public as well as being a Conservative member. Penny, I'm right in saying that your worry is that up against Keir Starmer, and this is quite damning because he's regarded as a dullard by most people, you actually think he would be in with a very good chance against either of these two.
I do. I think in 2 years' time, the Tories will lose the election and we'll have a coalition of Labour and Lib Dems. That's just an opinion, but just watching everything as it's been happening, I think people would just turn away from Tories.
It's also an opinion. I'm assuming what you're implying is it would also be a disaster.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't imagine anything worse.
Can I just bring in William for a final thought? I mean, so much love from the membership in relation to Kemi Badenoch and also Penny Mordaunt. Would it be a shrewd move for whoever wins to include them in one of the top 4 positions in the cabinet? And I ask you that because I've been reading in a couple of the broadsheets this morning. There's sort of lots of whispers about Steve Barclay potentially being Rishi Sunak's Chancellor and perhaps Therese Coffey, or I think it was Simon Clarke, who's Chief Secretary to the Treasury at the moment, becoming Chancellor under Liz Truss. Would it make sense to have put Penny or Kemi Badenoch there?
I wouldn't necessarily say they're likely to be in as Chancellor. I think especially, for example, with Steve Barclay or Kwasi Kwarteng for Liz Truss, there are people who are both long-term allies, long-term friends of the two candidates, but also people they're quite aligned to economically. And I'd especially say with Kemi Badenoch, with her sort of lack of previous cabinet experience, perhaps going straight in as Chancellor would be unlikely. Also, I wouldn't necessarily say economics is Penny Mordaunt's strong suit, but I could see both of them having a relatively senior cabinet role.
She was in contention for the top job, and now she's being dismissed for one of the top 4 in cabinet. Is extraordinary.
Well, that probably shows why Tory MPs didn't put her through to the final 2.
Interesting.
But what would qualify Theresa Coffey to be the Chancellor? I can't believe you said that.
That's not Mike. That's what they're saying. Yeah, Liz Truss wants Theresa Coffey, Kwasi Kwarteng, or who was the other one? Simon Clarke.
Well, Penny, really, really good to hear the views of you and your husband there as to what it's about, all the way from Watlington in Oxfordshire. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and lovely speaking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
both.
much. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're asking you this morning, who do you want as your next Prime Minister? So get in touch and have your say. I mean, you know what it's down. Here is the race. It's Liz versus Rishi.
You hated first names.
I do hate first names.
What are you doing then?
Because it was too much of an effort to think of a second name.
I think Rishi, it's like the Boris thing. Rishi, that name stands on its own, doesn't it? Liz not so much, but everyone called Boris. And I think Rishi, you know, Dishy, Rishi, Fishy, Rishi, or...
This, folks, there's this terrible trend amongst... What are people of this generation called?
Snowflakes?
Yes,
Millennials?
Millennials, that's the word. And they never give anybody's name. So when I was at school, I was called Holmes. That was my name.
Webbo.
My name was... You were what?
Webbo, Webster.
Yeah, Webbo. I was called Homo. Homer.
No comment.
Sherlock.
William, were you called Atkinson?
Only occasionally. I mean, I was often called Wimmus because my full name is William Thomas Marcus, and when I was a child, I couldn't pronounce that, so I just shortened it to Wimmus. So I'm quite fond of that.
So is that what the teachers called you?
No, it was more friends and things. The teachers largely called me William or Atkinson.
Or
Will. I hate
My
Will.
son's called William. I call him Willy Bubs.
Ah, that's my mother does something similar.
Well,
yeah.
if
Age
you want
22.
to know, from my view, that's the start of the rot. That is the start of the rot with his generation. The days that teachers, even worse than teachers calling you by your first name, is you calling a teacher by the first name.
Well, you just called our future Prime Minister by their first name.
But you know, normally I call people lots of different names.
That's true. It's very lucky they got their first name.
Yeah. But anyway, the only reason I said it is...
whether you want Sunak or Truss.
The bloomin' Sun are doing it, aren't they? There it is there. Liz versus Rishi. Too familiar, all of this. Far too familiar.
What do you think about that?
Don't like it.
Who do you want to see as leader? Get in touch, you know.
Second names or two names together.
Yeah, proper.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to take a break. Let us know after that. Oh, in fact, we're not going to take a break. We're going to bring you up to date on the latest headlines with the time at 6:17, our top story. More than 40 houses and shops were destroyed in London after those record temperatures led to hundreds of fires across the capital. Around 90 families had to be evacuated from their homes. Major fire incidents were also declared in Norfolk, Suffolk, Lincolnshire, Leicestershire and South Yorkshire.
The Court of Appeal will consider if doctors should stop providing life support treatment to 12-year-old Archie Battersby, who suffered brain damage in an accident 3 months ago. Archie's parents are fighting a High Court ruling with the support of the Christian Legal Centre, who say they're taking a stand for Archie's life.
England are through to the Women's Euro 2022 semi-finals after beating Spain 2-1. A crowd of almost 29,000 watched as the Lionesses came back from a goal down to win in extra time. The squad will now face either Sweden or Belgium in the last four in Sheffield next Tuesday.
OK, the legacy of the couple of days of extreme heat continue because damaged rail tracks will disrupt train services across the country for the rest of the week. Thousands of you left stranded if you're a passenger.
Yeah, Network Rail have also warned that any major downpours following the extreme heat could also cause flooding and overwhelm the track's drainage.
Let's go to Rosie Wright, or Rosie, as Isabel would prefer to call her, but I'm giving her an official title there, who joins us now from Euston train station. What's departing or what's not departing, Rosie?
A very good morning to both of you. I have to say I've got some good news to report. I've been speaking to Network Rail. Engineers, people working on those repairs have been busy overnight to ensure that people trying to travel this morning have got a very different experience to those of yesterday. Of course, the peak of the heat was on Tuesday, but that caused significant damage to our train tracks. And when I'm talking significant, our railways are really built to designed to deal with a British summer of around 27 degrees. Of course, we saw temperatures of over 40. Well, that has damaged tracks and also the overhead rail lines. In fact, we've got 30,000 kilometres of track in the UK. Well, Network Rail said that at the peak of the heat wave, we had 9 extra kilometres because each kilometre can expand up to 30 centimetres. Now, our tracks are designed to deal with some level of heat, but not to the degree we saw on Tuesday. So Wednesday was significant travel disruption. Lots lots of trains not coming out of London Euston or King's Cross, and actually no trains after 10 o'clock last night. This morning, though, most networks have got a normal service. The key advice I keep hearing, they've said, is check online if your service is going to be running before. There are lots of different ways you can get a refund for your ticket if it's not running, and most of those networks, so East Coast Mainline, Midland Mainline, West Coast Mainline, are running a normal service. They've been significantly delayed, particularly because of things like, as you just mentioned in the headlines, fires as well. Avanti Coast have got a few cancellations. I can't quite get to the bottom of why that is, but the departures board looks full of trains that are actually departing this morning, which was very different to that of yesterday. But a note of caution, while the weather isn't hampering travel so much, of course, we've got more strikes to come. And that's the other really big headache for people wanting to get out on the rails. We've got next Wednesday, next Saturday, 2 further dates in August. The RMT were having very significant negotiations with Network Rail just in this building here, as we had those 3 strike days in June.
Could I just say...
We've got lots more of that to come, I'm afraid. Yes.
Thank you very, very much indeed. Appreciate it. And we'll be speaking and we'll be crossing back to Rosie later on, talking about the effects of the heatwave on the tracks, the latest effect.
And not just on the tracks, also on water. Could it lead to a hose
Well,
pipe
I'm
ban?
just surprised it's taken so long.
Yeah.
Somebody to say, oh, we're all going to, die of thirst, whatever it is.
But you know what?
What?
I feel a bit nostalgic when I hear about hose pipe bans. It does remind me of my childhood.
Do you like a hose pipe?
No, I do like to water my plants.
Yes, you like a, but you know.
Yes.
But what do you use a watering can?
I do use a hose and I use a watering can.
Yeah. But you see, I'm just going to make this point about hose pipe bans. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. It's not even the weather's fault.
Don't punish the plants.
Hold on. I'll tell you whose fault it is. All the water companies and the government. Why? Because they don't dig holes in the ground. They're called reservoirs, right? There's enough rain around the country. We just don't capture it. Anyway, here's the weather.
Good morning. Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today, after all the drama of the thunderstorms and the heat, things are much closer to average. Quite a lot of cloud around. Temperatures about the average for this time of year, and not much rain around either. We're kind of between weather systems. The heat has been pulled away to the east, which is why it's much more comfortable out there this morning. Quite cloudy out there this morning as well, but most places having a dry start to the day. Sunny spells across Wales, southwest England, a good part of Scotland, and for most it's going to be a dry and a bright day. The cloud will come and go. Just a chance of 1 or 2 showers over parts of the Midlands, and particularly later on over parts of northwest England, maybe southwest Scotland, but as I said, most places are going to be dry. With a breeze coming in from the North Sea, some of the east coast will be a little cool. Temperatures generally close to those average values for this time of the year. High teens, low 20s across the north, maybe mid-20s further south. Through this evening, a few more showers possible over northern England, and overnight we'll start to see maybe a few more drifting up from the south. It will be a slightly warmer night, particularly across the far south, with temperatures perhaps staying again in the mid-teens here. Again, not as hot and humid as previous nights, but warmer than last night. Friday's details, well, it's a question of dodging the showers. Not too many across northern Britain, certainly Northern Ireland, mostly dry and fine with sunny spells. And there'll be some sunshine further south as well. But across the far south, we do need to keep our eyes peeled for thunderstorms spreading up across the channel. They'll be very hit and miss, but some heavy downpours are possible later tomorrow especially. Elsewhere, I'd say the showers will be pretty scattered and nothing too heavy. Temperatures just picking up a little across the south, back into the mid-20s. The weather looking fairly mixed into the weekends across the north. Plenty of showery rain around with temperatures close to average. But in the south, temperatures could start to pick up, maybe back over 30 Celsius across the southeast on Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation. We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
26 minutes past 6 o'clock. Very nice to have you on board. Breakfast at GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel, Webster.
Still to come on our programme this morning at 6:45. We're really excited about this. We're going to be introducing you to our first ever People's Champion, someone who's gone above and beyond in their community. We've been sent so many, and it's been a real pleasure reading through those nominations and selecting the first one. We found someone who we think is really, really special, and we want to shed a little bit of positivity, share a little bit of light in the darkness. And
20 minutes time.
20 minutes time.
You know, and the thing is, that's the first. It won't be our last People's Champion. We'll be doing one a week, and keep the nominations coming in. OK, and whether it's Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak, who will be sat across from the Labour leader in the Commons in September? Shadow Justice Secretary Steve Reid will give us his thoughts on the Conservative leadership race.
And remember, get in touch on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews. Now, with the UK currently undergoing an extreme heat wave, the water companies are seeing an unprecedented spike in usage.
Our East of England reporter, Ed Crawford, he's in Grantham, Margaret Thatcher territory, yeah, and has been speaking to, I thought that said Angela Water. No,
Angela Rayner.
Anglia Water. Anglia Water, right? You don't really speak to Anglia Water, but anyway, Anglia Water's a company, but not a person. Here we go.
The British public are making the most of the sunny weather during the current heatwave. But fun in the sun often comes with increasing need for water, and that higher demand is increasing pressure on the UK's water suppliers.
With the UK experiencing a heatwave at the moment, there's been an increased demand for water. That's why I've come to Grantham Reservoir to speak to Anglia Water and understand how are they rising to the challenges.
Nicola Harvey, spokesperson at Anglia Water, has definitely seen a change in recent weeks.
We're seeing a lot more demand on our services, about 35% increase on our normal demand. So normally we'd put about 1.1 billion litres of water into our supply every day. That's gone up to about 1.4, 1.5 billion litres. So that demand is putting a lot of pressure on our networks. So the reason for the increase in demand is obviously there's hot weather, people are using more water, taking more showers, using paddling pools and things like that in the garden. So that's what's causing that increase.
During the cost of living crisis, people in the UK are seeing rising water rates and an increased demand on suppliers, so the customer is feeling the heat. However, there are ways to conserve water.
So our main top tips for conserving water are, if you're going to use the paddling pool, which obviously we want people to enjoy themselves in this lovely warm weather, is to reuse that water. So use that water on to water the plants in the garden, to wash your car. If you're taking a shower, take a slightly shorter shower. Just be really mindful of the water that you're using, just to help us with that demand of increase that we're seeing at the moment.
Grafton is one of Anglia Water's largest reservoirs with a circumference of around 16 kilometres. Whilst there isn't a risk of the reservoir drying up right now, if heat waves become more common, the need to conserve water will become even greater. Ed Crawford, GB News.
Thanks, Ed. Maybe a bad water situation, but beautiful pictures there, I have to say.
True. Well, that's the thing with this heat wave and all the problems that came with it. The weather was beautiful. Beautiful blue sky.
It is beautiful. It's still quite nice.
Yeah, I love summer. Anyway, we're
You're
going to
on your holidays next week, are you? Yeah, and I will eventually as well. I'll be going to God's Own.
I'm not really going anywhere. I'm just looking after my children because they're off school. But I'm looking forward to that.
Well, I'm going to Ireland.
Oh,
yes.
Lovely.
Which normally doesn't have sunshine.
But it does at the moment.
But it has sunshine within the hearts of its people, it has to be said. Kevin Craig, he's great crack. And Baroness Claire Fox, she's even better crack. And they're going through the newspapers right after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation. We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Coming up to 25 to 7, let's have a look at what's making the news. Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss are the final two contenders to become Prime Minister after Penny Mordaunt was eliminated in the latest round of voting. Conservative members should receive postal ballots by early August. They have until the 2nd of September to vote for the replacement to Boris Johnson.
Gatwick Airport has hired 400 new security staff to try and help ease queuing ahead of the school holidays. Bosses say they're doing everything possible to make the process as smooth as possible following months of disruption and delays.
The number of asylum seekers in UK hotels has trebled in a year. Home Office data shows there were over 26,000 migrants living in temporary accommodation at the end of last year, compared to almost 9,500 at the start of 2021.
Right, it's time to go through the papers. This morning we're joined by Baroness Claire Fox for the first time doing the papers with us from the Academy of Ideas, and we're also joined by Kevin Craig, who's the CEO of PLMR, which is a PR firm. And
it is.
You're not new to this. You've been around a few times with us.
Indeed,
Welcome back to
pleasure.
you.
Yep.
So I think we're going to start this morning with the story that's on unsurprisingly, the front of all the papers, and that is the leadership battle, Claire. You've chosen the I and this discussion about Liz Truss, who we will have on our programme this morning at 8:30, as the bookies' favourite and also amongst the membership in polls as well to become our new PM.
Well, I think we have to start off by acknowledging that the general conversation that you've had on the programme and that seems to be going on in the country is, oh God, do we have to choose between these two? So it's not exactly in a very edifying
Well, I don't know if that's what we've been saying on the programme. I certainly think it's
well, our viewers, our membership,
I
yes.
wasn't suggesting that.
Yeah. Don't you be so touchy.
Well, I'm just making sure. But what I would
don't
say,
worry.
I mean, a lot of people would say they're the big beasts of the contest.
I know, but we all also know that everybody's saying, well, couldn't we have had a new person? Kemi was very popular, you know. Then there's this row about Penny Mordaunt, whether she was or not. The point I'm making is that when it says here on the front page of the Eye, Liz Truss, new favourite to become Prime Minister, it doesn't indicate, however, a widespread endorsement. And actually, if you read the newspaper, she's a favourite to become Prime Minister because Rishi Sunak is considered to be potentially so unpopular with the country that Liz, who is considered to be what have people said, wooden and not a very good presenter and not necessarily somebody who thought as natural, will come through. Having said all of this, I mean, I think some of the criticisms of Liz Truss, forget the politics, actually do forget the politics, because they'll say things like she's really wooden, she doesn't present well, whereas somebody like Penny Mordaunt was such a great communicator. You know, Rishi Sunak's so slick. Do you think does anybody care about what anyone says anymore?
Policies.
I don't
what
actually
do for the
care.
country.
I
yeah.
know. I to a certain extent, if the only criticism of her is that she doesn't present well, then actually maybe we should listen to what she's saying. No, of course not. I'm saying that's the main one that's coming through. I think there are concerns, though, that she won't relate to the country. She's been backed by the ERG, by the European Research Group, so they're the kind of hardcore Brexiteers. You know, I think don't trust Rishi. Everybody's making this point about how weird they're backing her when she voted Remain. I actually think, by the way, that's to somebody's credit, because it is perfectly acceptable that somebody voted Remain and then says, well, now I've decided it's a done deal, I'm now going to fight for it. And I also think that because she's one of the few people in the leadership election who mentioned the Northern Irish Protocol, which if you think that Brexit might end up ignoring that dilemma and saying, oh, Brexit's done, let's talk about it, which some of the candidates said, she's the one that acknowledges there's still some way to go at resolving that.
OK, we'll ask her that today, incidentally, because it's all gone quiet on that protocol front. Kevin, you go to the front page of The Guardian and they talk about this blue on blue face-off.
And Eamonn, you know, all of the newspapers in one way or another have a political position. So, you know, the Daily Mail is full steam behind Liz Truss. The Telegraph is championing Rishi Sunak. And papers like The Guardian and The Mirror are just looking in on this, saying, well, you lot have been running the country in one way or another for 12 years, and look at the mess you made of it, and it doesn't matter who you choose. But what's interesting about The Guardian today is that it's a really good piece in terms of detailed policy analysis about where the two candidates think about things like the environment and tax. And I think for that reason, it's a good read. And also concern expressed by many Conservatives, rightfully, I think, of the impact these public rows have between the candidates. The debates so far have given Labour one of its best attack videos for years, you know, because you had 5 or 6 Conservative candidates trashing their record. So a very good detailed piece there. When she's on today, I think I would disagree with Claire. It does matter in politics if you're a good communicator. And I am, you know, the Conservative Party, in my opinion, as a communications person and also outside of work, a Labour person, made a mistake in getting rid of Penny Mordaunt because she could communicate their messages more powerfully and more effectively, I think, than these two. And that's going to be part of the next result. It's not everything, you know, substance over spin and all that, but I thought, wow, what a decision.
Lots of people making the point, Kevin, that Margaret Thatcher, when she came to power, was a terrible communicator. She looked a mess, her hair was a mess, and she pulled herself together and her voice apparently was very shrill in the beginning, and she turned that round. The counter-argument that I've also heard to that is that actually Liz Truss has been in Cabinet for 12 years. She's had plenty of time to polish her public speaking in that time.
Well, test her this morning, you know, when she's on at 8:30, see how she freestyles it and deals with stuff you ask her from out of nowhere, and that's her biggest challenge. Now, those of us who follow your Twitter account, Isabel, know that you were in number 10 yesterday. So, you know, you can tell us what the vibe is, but I think it's a mistake that they've chosen these last two because anybody was going to beat Rishi as it currently stands.
But the problem, I think, is, and this is where we go back, Because part of the story on the Guardian front page, it's in a lot of the papers, is this idea that there's this nasty blue-on-blue dogfight. I agree with you, there has been. But then when people say things like, well, Penny Mordaunt, you know, she's such a good communicator, but it's what is she communicating? And I think that it's perfectly reasonable that lots of people, including myself, will say, because I've encountered this in relation to the Lords, when we've been having these struggles over the gender-critical arguments about sex versus gender and so on, Penny Mordaunt was one of the people who was involved in that.
Yeah, no one cares about that.
I'm afraid that
it's so early.
Just hold on.
Trans stuff.
I actually think that lots of
cost of living. Why do we always have to go back to this stuff?
No, well, actually, it's interesting that you should say that because I was with a lot of Labour women activists the other day, and they do care about it.
Yeah, but
I know that you don't think that women's rights matter in this instance.
Why are you twisting that?
No,
why are you twisting that? Why? I didn't say that.
Kevin,
why is everything trans issues at this?
Kevin, I can't. First of all, I can't finish the sentence.
Well, because you just said something that wasn't true.
No, but I'm saying that for women activists on left and right. Yes. This matters.
It's not the number one issue.
I didn't say it was the number one issue. I'm explaining to you that one of the reasons why we were concerned about Penny Mordaunt getting through without there being a challenge, and by the way, it wasn't just on that, was an underestimation, which I think you're potentially doing, of the importance of the big cultural questions. And Penny Mordaunt's book, which a lot of people hadn't read, let's be honest, till she stood, when they read it, they thought, it's very odd. She's a conservative who communicates well, but she's actually attacking a lot of establishment norms, whether you like them or not. Maybe you were right or wrong, but people didn't even know that. And so, consequently, I'm making the point that if you're going to say she's a good communicator, you do have to say what is she communicating and what does she stand for. And I don't think that she was arguing things which were going to be helpful for the country.
Maybe that's where she went wrong, attacking establishment norms. Maybe that's...
Well, I mean, certainly if you say, let's pull down the edifices of, you know, things like tradition, it's all very boring and old-fashioned and white and so on in a book, and then hope nobody reads it, and then get mad when they do.
Well, look, listen, folks, you hear the argument there. Is that an issue that matters to you? Let us know. Get in touch, gbnews at gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can email our Twitter on, what is it, at GB News.
At GB News.
Yeah. Now, listen, you talk about the issues that matter. Now, here's what I think really matters. People, the cost of living crisis, the fuel crisis, whatever at the moment, tough. But, folks, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because, Claire, when we go into the autumn, what is the big fear here as regards President Putin?
Well, I mean, we're looking here at the story about Europeans urged to turn the lights off amid fears Putin will cut off the gas. There's a real problem within the European countries, within the EU, and Ursula von der Leyen has actually said to lots of European countries, you are going to have to reduce your use of energy. And so we all know we're facing an energy crisis. Because Putin is threatening to turn the gas off, and because the EU countries are dependent on Russian gas, they're actually not going to just not be able to afford to turn the lights on. There won't be enough energy to turn the lights on. And so they're being told now to save back, cut back. I think the important thing here is two things. You've just made the point, what's the important thing about President Putin? We haven't heard much on the Ukraine war, but things are really ratcheting up. And in fact, part of this story on the front page of the Telegraph is to explain that Lavrov, one of the from Russia, said we're not going to confine ourselves to the Donbass and the eastern region. We're going for the whole of Ukraine. This war isn't going to end anytime soon. The consequence of, and the second big issue is energy security. Are we going to be in a situation where we're dependent on energy from outside different countries? So that's going to lead to some tensions within Europe, within nation states. I think in terms of the UK, it also means that we have to consider whether our dismissal of fossil fuels because of net zero targets is the right thing to do.
Well, Claire, I'm interested in you saying that, and, you know, a lot of people say fracking's the answer. Could you be persuaded?
I'd be enthusiastic.
Liz Truss.
You'd be enthusiastic.
I'm enthusiastic about
Where are you on this?
Well, I just sometimes worry that, you know, good folks like Claire are more worried about so-called woke and trans issues than the future of the planet that we live on. And I note that Liz Truss, is one of her planks of policy, is to go for green levies. They're not there. Green levies are not there to mess about and just cause people pain for the sake of it. They're trying to deal with a heating and warming planet. I think what we all would agree on, which this piece talks about, is that Europe was too dependent on Russia gas supplies, 40% in 2021, and that for our country, fortunately, we're not in that position, which I think we can all agree about. But you know, the planet's in real danger.
It is, Kevin. Absolutely no doubt about it. We're not going to make a darn bit of difference to that if America doesn't have the same policy, if India doesn't have the same policy, if Russia doesn't have the same policy. And that's my concern. I said it last week. We are a pimple on the backside of this planet.
That's a nice image.
But,
but it's true. It's true. Yeah. What darn bit of difference does it make? We've got, 66 million people in a tiny island. What darn bit of difference will it make?
Isabel?
Well, the one thing I wanted to make when it comes
you don't know. That's the answer.
I do. I'm just letting
when it comes
speaking.
to the thank you. When it comes to the climate change debate, and we talk about whether we're irrelevant or insignificant in the debate about it, I actually think sometimes we forget that it's not just about talking about warming temperatures and what that means for polar bears, what that means for flooding, what that means. Actually, the consequences of climate change that we forget are on things like mass migration. People all trying to get away from Sahara Desert that's expanding in vast numbers, and what that means for problems here in the UK.
I get that.
But people don't discuss that.
But why penalising our people is going to help that?
I'm just discussing it from our country.
The difficulty we've got is that when we have a discussion about climate change, it's interesting the way you pose it there, Kevin, because I've actually been talking about the threat of expensive energy on cost of living before it became fashionable to mention the threat of expensive energy on cost of living. Yeah. Because ordinary working people will be paying the costs of the fact that our energy has been reduced. We have actually got government that has said the most important thing is arriving at a net zero target than producing and creating cheap, reliable energy sources. That's not about being disregarding of the potential of climate change.
They're not mutually exclusive, Claire.
No. Well, I think that they have been, and I think that when you look at the plans to reach net zero targets, which all parties go with, heat pump boilers, right, expensive, heat your house up less efficiently. People are going to have to spend a fortune on that. A reduction in car use, which actually means that there's less liberty for people who live in non-urban areas, which is most of the people in the country who need the car for freedom, and then they're worried about electric cars and so on. So there are real consequences to just nodding through climate change policies without at least a more imaginative way of dealing with things.
The debate going. You've raised the thermometer on this, guys, between you. The reason we're going to cut across, is we've got a very, very important announcement to make. We are the People's Channel here in GB News. We want to hear from you, and indeed we have, because for the last few weeks you've been getting in touch to tell us about someone who's been doing something amazing for your community.
Yeah, and we're really pleased to say this is the first time on our show that we have announced a People's Champion.
Well, we're going to go live via satellite to Weverham, I think it's pronounced. It's in Cheshire, right? And there's a man here, David Hodkinson. David, good morning to you.
Yeah,
lovely to see you, my friend. You wrote to us.
Welcome.
Tell us about
your...
Hi, good seeing you, mate. Tell us about you, first of all, before we talk...
About your nominee.
Yes.
About politics. About me. So it's Weverham, not Weverham. Weverham. I was diagnosed with motor neurone disease 2 years ago. But before that, I was a working, healthy guy. And, things just change, don't they, Things get... you become vulnerable and rely on other people. That's about it, really.
Fantastic to learn a little bit about you, David, and sorry to hear about those struggles, which we can only imagine are incredibly difficult. But you're actually here to tell us about your very good friend, Stephen. He's with you today. Why don't you bring him in for a moment? Because you've actually nominated him, haven't you?
So we've been lying about him.
And this is a complete surprise. You've been nominated as the People's Champion. Let's first of all take a look at why this means so much to you.
I've nominated Stephen Carter for this award. So, approximately 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with motor neurons disease. And since then, my legs obviously have gone, can barely walk now. So I can't go shopping on my own. I can't go upstairs here, as you can believe, but I will be moving. So he takes me shopping, gets all my food in. If I'm short of anything, he's there. So, you know, without Stephen, my life would be so much harder. And not only does he do that, takes me shopping, looks after me, he's just done a 200k run in June for motor neurons disease. A real amazing man, and I'm very grateful that I have such a good friend.
So, there you are.
Stephen, this is a complete
Stephen
surprise
Carter.
to you, wasn't it, this morning? And we are so thrilled to hear about what an incredible man you are. There's a bit of a delay on the line, but Stephen, just tell us what it means to you.
So, it's quite, not embarrassing, but it's quite humbling. I just think people have said what I do for Dave, but to be honest, I'm sure he'd do the same for me, and anyone would do it for any of the mates. And it's tough watching your mate suffer like that, so you're just trying to make sure he's still having a good time and, you know, life a bit easier.
We're in Blackpool on Friday.
Yeah, so I'll take Dave Blackpool on Friday, have a bit of a boogie and a few pints, and it's just trying to do things normally for him. You know, you've got to try and put yourself in the situation of the shoes on the other foot, and you just hope people will be there for you. But yeah, it's a complete shock. It's took me by surprise, really.
Well, you're the best of Britain.
Well, not only do you care for him, and you know, just to make it clear to people watching and listening, David has got motor neuron disease, and this guy Stephen is his mate. He cares for him, and in what way? I mean, how do you make it? How do you improve his life, Stephen? What do you want to do for him, and why do you do it?
Like I say, it's just because it's your friend, isn't it? And I mean, I've got to give a shout out to my partner as well, because my partner Emma's been helping Dave as well, and Emma was actually going through cancer treatment last year. Yeah. She's just come out with the all clear, which is great. But you see people suffering, and you just want to help them, and for your you know, your best mates, your partner, even for strangers, you just want to help people. Maybe runs for a local charity, Tiny Steps. Girl with a certain type of epilepsy. I just think if you've got that capacity to help people, why not? You've got spare time. I've changed my job a couple of years ago, so I have got a bit of time to help Dave. I know other people haven't. So
what do you work at?
It just reflects on me. It looks like I'm helping.
What do you do?
I used to be in banking. I quit it, and now I run my own business, walking dogs. Now.
Whoa, you are a fitness fanatic.
Dream. Yeah,
incredible. David, you have a chance as we make the award. You have a chance to say what Stephen means to you.
Well, the only it means everything, to be honest. My life would stop without his help. There'd be no social life, and the only battle that we have. The only thing that we can do with motor neurons disease is to keep positive and keep going, which I do, obviously. But without his support, it would be so hard not to. And if I'm having a bad day, he gives me a kick up and puck up. And we're going on holiday. He's taking me on holiday in September. We're going clubbing in Ibiza. And then we're going to watch the World Cup in December in Fuerteventura. Hopefully the guys will take a bit of a leaf out of the girls' books and do well. So, but everything he does, he plans ahead for me. And going back to his partner Emma Stockton, who's battled breast cancer, and comes round here and cuts my toenails, which you would not want to do. No. You know, you've got to give credit to where people are. There's a lot of good. You know, since I've had this disease, I've experienced love and kindness throughout everywhere. But these two go beyond. You know, especially Stephen.
It's absolutely beautiful to hear. Absolutely fantastic.
I've got goosebumps and I feel tears in my eyes, and that's why we feel so passionately about this People's Champion idea, because we believe there are people like you, Stephen, up and down the country who are good people, need celebrating, need thanks for what they do, public recognition as well. Well done.
And talking about
Absolutely
celebration and recognition, you two, before you head off to Ibiza and Fuerteventura, you're going to Blackpool, yeah? Is it this weekend?
Oh yeah, look.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Well,
we love Blackpool.
Yeah, good. I love Blackpool too. I love Blackpool. Now, what we're going to do...
We'll be in the Vic... Yeah.
Well, what we're saying is, as part of your prize, Stephen, and your recognition, is we're paying for your dinner. We're paying for a night out, a dinner for you guys. There, we don't want you going anywhere too posh now, spending too much money.
Go on.
But anyway, you're going to have a meal on us, a meal on GB News. It's our treat, and you know, so good. Enjoy that. But we just want to say to you, Stephen Carter, you are the man. You are the people's champion. Thank you very much indeed.
Brilliant.
First ever as well. First ever. And we'll send you a couple of GB News mugs as well while we're at it. Why not?
That's us. In my hair. You can have one eye dry, Carter. Yeah, well,
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Well done. Keep those nominations coming in, folks.
I just love this. This has made my day.
So much bad news, so much
day.
negative news, so
Love
much
it.
all those sort of things. And there you have a really, really good person. And they're really good mates, David and Stephen there. So I hope you have a mate like that. I hope you have a friend like that. If so, let us know. Back after this.
Good morning. Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today, after all the drama of the thunderstorms and the heat, things are much closer to average. Quite a lot of cloud around. Temperatures about the average for this time of year, and not much rain around either. We're kind of between weather systems. The heat has been pulled away to the east, which is why it's much more comfortable out there this morning. Quite cloudy out there this morning as well, but most places having a dry start to the day. Sunny spells across Wales, southwest England, a good part of Scotland, and for most it's going to be a dry and a bright day. The cloud will come and go. Just a chance of one or two showers over parts of the Midlands, and particularly later on over parts of northwest England, maybe southwest Scotland, but as I said, most places are going to be dry. With a breeze coming in from the North Sea, some of the east coast will be a little cool. Temperatures generally close to those average values for this time of the year. High teens, low 20s across the north, maybe mid-20s further south. Through this evening, a few more showers possible over northern England, and overnight we'll start to see maybe a few more drifting up from the south. It will be a slightly warmer night, particularly across the far south, with temperatures perhaps staying again in the mid-teens here. Again, not as hot and humid as previous nights, but warmer than last night. Friday's details, well, it's a question of dodging the showers. Not too many across northern Britain, certainly Northern Ireland, mostly dry and fine with sunny spells. And there'll be some sunshine further south as well. But across the far south, we do need to keep our eyes peeled for thunderstorms spreading up across the channel. They'll be very hit and miss, but some heavy downpours are possible later tomorrow especially. Elsewhere, I'd say the showers will be pretty scattered and nothing too heavy. Temperatures just picking up a little across the south, back into the mid-20s. The weather looking fairly mixed into the weekends across the north. Plenty of showery rain around with temperatures close to average. But in the south, temperatures could start to pick up maybe back over 30 Celsius across the southeast on Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation. We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The race for number 10 comes down to two as Sunak and Truss make it to the final round.
A very good morning to you. The time, 7 o'clock exactly. It's Thursday, it's the 21st of July. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with me, Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading our news this morning. The former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, and the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, are through to the final round of the Conservative leadership election. The two will go head-to-head in an attempt to win over the party membership, and we'll be speaking to Liz Truss later in the programme at 8:45.
An inquiry has been launched by the Cabinet Office into claims the civil service leaked stories to damage Penny Mordaunt. It comes after papers drawn up were published in the Sunday Times.
Train journeys are expected to be disrupted again today due to repairs taking place on railway tracks in the wake of this week's unprecedented heatwave. The record high temperatures caused the steel tracks to buckle, which has led to mass delays and cancellations.
Thanks very much indeed. You have been out of the blocks today on what you've got to say, and the Liz Rishi thing is preoccupying you. Just a thought, says Heather. Good morning, Heather. If Liz Truss wins the leadership contest, then Great Britain will have an Elizabeth as our monarch and also our Prime Minister.
June says Liz Truss has done a good job with every position she's held in government. She seems to be committed to dropping the green tax and bringing down the cost of living. Good on her. Give the woman a chance.
Stuart says, is this it? The next PM will be Sunak or Truss. Is that really the best we can do? No, it's not. We could keep the best PM we ever had in Boris. There you go.
Thoughts coming in. Email us, gbnews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us @gbnews.
Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss will now go head-to-head in the contest to become the next Prime Minister.
It comes after Penny Mordaunt was eliminated from the race after receiving the fewest votes in the final MP's ballot.
So what happens next? Our reporter Paul Hawkins will explain.
The numbers of votes cast for each candidate is as follows. Mordaunt, 105. Sunak, 137. Truss, 113. Therefore, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss will be the candidates going forward to a final ballot of Conservative Party members.
Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will slug it out to be the next Conservative leader and your Prime Minister. It's the final round of voting, and now it goes to the party members, not just the MPs. Over the next 6 weeks, expect lots of campaigning, interviews, several hustings, and at least one televised debate. And before you think about becoming a member to get a vote, don't bother. You can only vote if you've been a member for 3 months. If that's you, then from August the 1st, you'll start to receive a ballot pack with instructions on how to vote, either by post or online. The recommended way, which also uses special codes to make sure the vote is secure. If you're on holiday, don't worry. The party says you can apply for an email to be sent to you with the codes so you can apply online. So how many Conservative members are there? Well, the official number isn't known, but at the last leadership election in 2019, there were around 160,000 members. Insiders say that number is likely to have grown a bit, but it'll still be less than 0.5% of the electorate deciding who the next PM is. They've got until 5 p.m. on Friday, the 2nd of September to vote. The winner, their party leader, and the UK's next Prime Minister will be announced on Monday the 5th of September.
OK, let's get comment now from Deputy Editor of CapEx. That's Alice Denby, friend of the programme. Alice, well, you know, people are saying Liz Truss has this in the bag when it goes to the membership. What do you think?
I'm not convinced. I mean, I think she is probably ideologically closer to the membership, but I think a long campaign might expose some of her weaknesses. She's not as slick a performer as Rishi Sunak. The intense scrutiny she'll come under. I mean, obviously, she's been Foreign Secretary, she's been in the public eye for a long time, but running for Prime Minister is a different ballgame. So I think there's still all to play for here.
OK, so Rishi Sunak's not out of the game yet. He's come out at the front of the Times, and lots of his sound bites yesterday were all saying, if you choose Liz Truss, he's saying to the membership, then you lose the next general election. Is there some truth in that he'd be more popular in a general election?
That's certainly what polling shows at the moment. I think perhaps he has a slight advantage because more people have heard of him, because he was riding high during the pandemic. Again, I mean, he's kind of trying to really burnish his Thatcherite credentials. He clearly thinks that that's going to be an election winner, but actually it's
They're
Liz
both
Truss.
trying to do that, aren't they?
I mean, actually, ideologically, there's very little between them. It's a question of, it's this rather kind of obscure debate about cutting taxes now or cutting them, you know, just before an election. So we'll see how those kind of differences get teased out during the campaign. I think.
Well, if people hurt now, Liz Truss attacks or insinuations towards Rishi Sunak are going to hurt, because people hurt. What I'm saying is, if you're squeezing, money matters and it matters now.
Yes, exactly. People are really struggling to pay their bills right now, and Liz Truss is saying she's going to do something to help.
In some ways, on that, though, is the former Chancellor at a disadvantage because he's actually had to balance the books himself, and it's very easy for the Foreign Secretary to come in and say, I'm going to cut taxes from day one, but Rishi Sunak's turning around saying this isn't honest economics, that's fairy tale economics. It's just not going to work because we have to pay for public services, we can't increase our borrowing, as a percentage to GDP, it's going to stoke inflation, all those kinds of arguments. They do come from different positions because of, obviously, his past as Chancellor.
Yes, absolutely, and his difficulty is that he's presided over the economic mess that we are now in. I mean, you can say that there are kind of external factors, but it's him who's raised the tax burden to the highest it's been for decades, and it's him that's been in charge of the economy for the past few years. So that is a real disadvantage to him.
Alice, let's get another view in all of this. And we love, obviously, to get out and about there and get you, the GB Breakfast News viewers and listeners. We go to Croydon. And there we have Helen Hampton.
Well, welcome back, Helen.
Friend of the programme. Helen, people will know you that you are a singer, you are a choir director, you're an amazing business person as well. You were a member of the Conservative Party. You're not anymore.
No.
What?
No,
did you renew it?
Right.
Well, it's not
the
right.
First bit's right. No, I mean, I was saying to your researcher yesterday that I joined the Conservative Party just over 3 months ago, in fact, so I will have a vote. And I joined it really as a kind of to try to support Boris Johnson, because I actually, I mean, regardless of all I mean, I know lots of people sort of loathe him, though he's obviously very polarising character, but I do not like the witch hunt. And I think my own feelings is the Conservative Party have shot themselves in the foot. You know,
what do you mean, Helen, when you say you don't like the witch hunt? What describe to me what you mean by a witch hunt?
It's very interesting. There's a couple of things I wanted to pick up from just recently in the news bulletin. Apparently, there's going to be an investigation because there's into leaks possibly coming from the civil service about Penny Mordaunt, and I have always felt that there were lots and lots of people in Whitehall, probably the civil service, who've been against Boris Johnson from the start. And I think I am not alone in the country in thinking
they may have good reason. They're the people that make government happen. They work all the time.
I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing that. People have very different opinions, and that's absolutely fine. This is how democracy works. But I don't think that I am alone in noticing there has been this constant, I mean, from day one, and I think it goes back to Brexit. And I think that we are still in very divisive times, and it concerns me the sort of ousting of a prime minister in this way.
Helen, I want to pick up on that, if I may.
People, actually. Sorry?
Helen, I want to ask you about that because at the front of the Express, talking about his parting shot and PMQs yesterday when he said "Hasta la vista," they're saying, was this a hint? I'll be back. Now, I was inside Number 10 yesterday, and I heard rumours that he wants to channel his inner idol, who of course is Winston Churchill, who had a period away from the Premiership and then made a comeback. Would that be something that you would like to see?
Well, he's a huge figure, and I think there's no getting away from that. I mean, you were talking this morning about who of these last two candidates has the best chance, and how that Liz Truss is possibly, too wooden. We're talking about charisma here. We're talking about that that X factor that some people have and other people don't. And Boris Johnson, whether you like him or loathe him, has it in spades. He's a marvellous sort of performer, and I think what captured the public is he has a very can-do sort of attitude. We can do it. He's very optimistic. He's very bullish. He makes you feel good. And I think you see that when he was out and about in the country, even in the height of the Partygate thing, people wanted to come up to him and shake his hand and have their picture taken. And I think he has that in spades. And I think the sad part is I think he's had the wrong people around him. And I do think actually, the investigation needs to be into the civil service, because it strikes me that the civil service is working against the government. We've seen this in the Home Office with it not wanting to implement the things that the Home Secretary is asking them to implement. Yeah. So I think we've got a huge problem going on.
All right, Helen. Stay there. I just want to get Alice Denby's take. Isabel was talking about that hasta la vista. Does it mean we could see him back? Could he be like Churchill? How do you think, how likely that is? I think when he starts being offered all the £1 million book deals...
Not what I was being told. Oh, gosh. Can you imagine? He can have a much nicer life writing his columns. He's got 2 small children.
He'll never be off the telly.
Make some money. But he could have had a nicer life than surviving the last 6 months inside Number 10 when he's been under constant attack. But he did not want to go because he loves being Prime Minister.
It's that vaunting ambition,
loves being Prime Minister, does that mean the rest of us should love him being Prime Minister?
It sounds like a lot of people do, doesn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it does. Helen, here, let's cut to the quick here. Let's cut to the chase, right? You're a Conservative Party member. Who are you going to vote for?
Well, I am at the minute, yes. And so I will have this vote, yes. So, I mean, at the minute, I will definitely vote for Liz Truss. I mean, I think Rishi is probably a decent man. He's always struck me as being a fairly straight-up, decent man. But I don't see it. I think actually Liz will do better. She seems to have got on quietly in the background, and despite the fact that she voted Remain, I mean, I know lots of my friends after the vote who chickened out at the ballot box. I'm sure she didn't chicken out because she's a politician. She would have weighed up the pros and cons, perhaps. But I know lots of people who said, "Oh yeah, I nearly did, but didn't." So contrary to the belief that people have. Brexit regret, I actually know lots and lots of people who felt the other way. So I don't think it's unreasonable for someone to change their stance to kind of either just because they accept the democratic vote or because they see actually.
But the bottom line is, Helen, will she win a general election?
Well, that I don't know. I mean, Boris obviously can win elections. He's proven that in London, which is a notoriously left-wing city, and he's obviously had this landslide victory. And I as I say, I think the Conservatives shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
But
Helen, can I just ask you, sorry, just because we've got Liz Truss on at 8:30, is there one thing you would like us to ask her if you got a chance to speak to her yourself? We can put a question to her for you.
Well, I think, I came on here the first time I came on here, and I think the things I said then are the same. We are crying out for a Conservative government. That is what we want. We want low taxes. We want immigration sorted.
Boris didn't give you a Conservative government. He won you an election.
And I'm not defending him on that. I mean, he was not perfect, and I think I said at the time, what are they doing? I've always said this, but again, we now hear that there was friction between him and the Chancellor. So we are where we are now. I would say to Liz Truss, give us the Conservative government we want. We need to sort immigration. We obviously need to deal with the cost of living crisis that is affecting so many people now. But we also want to move forward as the country that I think people in the Red Wall, the hardworking, grafting, machine sort of the kind of driving force of the nation. All that manufacturing, we want all that back. We want the Brexit opportunities that we voted for, and we want it delivered now. And I know times are difficult, but the things that matter to people, I would say, are cost of living, immigration, our health services in a shambles. I don't know about you. I don't want any more of my tax money going to the NHS until a root and branch, review has taken place, and they've got rid of all this unnecessary, the diversity stuff and all the things that are taking up money. When you see a job now, this is what I think annoys people in this country. They understand there's a war in Ukraine. They understand sort of inflation. They understand people are not stupid. But what galls them is when they hear there's £5 million a week or a day or whatever it is being spent on housing people who've come to this country illegally, when there are diversity positions being offered in the NHS for £100,000 a time. This is what galls people. We don't want waste. We don't want to have to pay for things that we don't agree with and which could be dealt with somewhere else down the line. So, by stopping the illegal immigration situation, that all the boats coming across, we would not have to have this burden. These are the things that matter to people. The fundamentals. We want our lives to be able to carry on. Everyone wants to be able to provide and put a roof over their head. Okay. Absolutely. We'll pay our tax for the things that are necessary, but we don't want to see this waste. It's the waste.
Helen, you're the best value for money of any guest we ever have, because it's the Helen Hampton show. That's where they should be. Right. But you talk so much sense, and I know you just want to get it out, and we're glad to let you get it out. And so many people agreeing, Helen, with what you say. You'd never think of running yourself, would you?
Well, Eamonn, you said last time that I should be Prime Minister, so I'm really upset that my name somehow wasn't on the ballot. How did that happen?
Don't know. You and me both. Helen. Helen, really, thank you very much indeed.
As always.
How are things going with the choir in this hot weather and whatever? Are you doing much singing?
Yes, we're still singing. We have a very big concert coming up at the Scoop, which is free in 2 weeks' time, Saturday the 30th, which is outside City Hall, if anyone wants to come and see us.
Thank you for my invite to the choir. I very much appreciate that. Just one really, really brief answer, if you will. Did you smell or see the fires in Croydon this week that we've heard so much about?
Yes, I live right at the back of one of the not where the big fire was. We had a small fire in the woods behind me, but yes, Shirley Hills is very close to me, and it is devastating. And I spend a lot of time walking my dogs, constantly picking up bits of glass and putting them in my pocket. My mother taught me to do that, and I wish everybody would do that when they're out. Just take a little carrier bag. If you see glass or metal, pick it, and preferably don't leave it up there in the first place. But for those of us who come behind, pick it up, because it will save our woodlands.
Helen, you are some pup. You really are. You're an amazing person. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to look. You just radiate through that screen, your energy. And thanks very much. We'll look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
So we know who Helen wants, or rather doesn't want. Let us know who you want as your Prime Minister this morning. Get in touch. Have your say. Twitter.
Let me tell you.
Come here and I'll tell you.
The say is Liz Truss by a mile.
Really, so far?
Yeah, that's the way it's coming in.
Saying?
Because they're saying 79% of people say Liz Truss. That just leaves 21 with Rishi Sunak.
That's amongst our viewers and listeners. That is you at home. So thank you for casting your vote. If you want to get involved in that vote, you can do so on Twitter. Thank you to you, Alice Denby. We are going to bring you the final result of that poll a little bit later on in the programme. And remember, our interview with Liz Truss is at what time?
8:30. 8:30 this morning. And she's coming to see us. She said no to all these other stations. She's just coming to see us. She's going to talk to us. She knows why,
because 70% of the people who listen and watch.
It's a good day to be appearing, Liz. A very good day. Here's the news situation at 18 minutes past 7. More than 40 houses and shops have been destroyed now after record temperatures led to hundreds of fires across London. Around 90 families had to be evacuated from their homes. Major fire incidents also declared in Norfolk, Suffolk, Lincolnshire, Leicestershire and South Yorkshire.
The Court of Appeal will consider if doctors should stop providing life support treatment to 12-year-old Archie Battersby, who suffered brain damage in an accident 3 months ago. Archie's parents are fighting a High Court ruling with the support of the Christian Legal Centre, who say they're taking a stand for Archie's life.
England women are through to the Euro 22 semi-finals. They beat Spain 2-1 last night. 29,000 people watched this one as the Lionesses came back from a goal down in extra time. The squad will now face either Sweden or Belgium in the last four. That match will be played in Sheffield next Tuesday.
OK, now this morning we announced the first ever winner of our People's Champion Award. It was Stephen Carter. He was nominated by David Hodkinson. Should we take a little recap of what it was all unfolding?
Here's what happened.
Quite humbling. I just think people have said what I do for Dave, but to be honest, I'm sure he'd do the same for me, and anyone would do it for any of the mates. And it's tough watching your mate suffer like that. So you're just trying to make sure he's still having a good time, and life a bit easier.
We're Blackpool on Friday.
Yeah, so I'll take Dave Blackpool on Friday. He'll have a bit of a boogie and a few pints. And he's just trying to do things normally for him. You've got to try and put yourself in the situation of the shoes on the other foot, and you just hope people will be there for you. But yeah, it's a complete shock. It's took me by surprise, really.
Well, you're the best of Britain.
Well, not only do you care for him, and just to make it clear to people watching and listening, David has got motor neurone disease, and this guy Stephen is his mate. He cares for him, and in what way? I mean, how do you make it? How do you improve his life, Stephen? What do you want to do from him? Why do you do it?
Like I say, it's just because it's your friend, isn't it? And I mean, I've got to give a shout out to my partner as well, because my partner Emma's been helping Dave as well, and Emma was actually going through cancer treatment last year. Yeah. She's just come out with the all clear, which is great. But you see people suffering, and you just want to help them, and for your best mates, your partner, even for strangers, you just want to help people. I mean, I used to do runs for a local charity, Tiny Steps. Girl with a certain type of epilepsy. I just think if you've got that capacity to help people, why not?
Our top man, Stephen Carter, our first ever winner of the People's Champion, is voted for by Big Dave, his nominator.
They're off to Blackpool on us. So that's really nice, isn't it? They're going to celebrate this weekend.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, Isabel. I mean,
what, you don't think a night out?
We're buying them a Chinese.
Well, they can have something a bit, whatever they want.
They're not going to Blackpool on us, just in
Okay.
case.
Okay, yeah, maybe. Yeah, not the whole
They just
shebang.
have a whole binge over the weekend, stay in a top hotel and all that sort of thing. Anyway, that's if they can get to Blackpool, because we're talking about train situation, and, our heart goes out to you if you rely on a train. When they work, it's like technology. When it works, absolutely brilliant. But because of the 2 days of extreme heat, rail tracks continue to disrupt the train services. Thousands of you left stranded in London yesterday.
Yes, Network Rail have also warned that major downpours following the extreme heat could also cause flooding and overwhelm the track's drainage.
Rosie, right now, we go to Euston Station in London now, which I know very, very well because that's where I head to Manchester from Euston. But tell us, how's it going there? How are things running?
Well, morning to you both. Eamonn, you would have a much easier job getting to Manchester on the train today than you would have done yesterday. The repercussions of those record-breaking temperatures have been groundbreaking, literally, actually, for the rail networks. Now, the tracks that we've been laid, normally, sorry about some of that language there, but the tracks that have been laid, 30,000 kilometres we've got across the UK. Now, at the peak of the heat, our rail network expanded by 9 kilometres. Each kilometre of rail track can stretch up to 30 centimetres when it gets really hot. Now, our rails have been designed to deal with an average British summer, and a bit hotter than that. About 27 degrees is optimal, but as soon as it gets really high and record-breaking, there we see breakages in the track and also damages to the overhead wires. Now, yesterday, the repercussions of the damage meant that it was really difficult to get around. You may very well have had a really torturous evening commute home. Well, I've been speaking to Network Rail this morning. Engineers have been working really hard overnight to make sure that this morning a normal service resumes on pretty much all of the services. Really good news. And the main thing they've said, though, is just check before you travel. I've been into London Euston this morning and taken a look at the departures board. board, pretty much everything's going. Avanti West Coast has got a few cancellations, but what I can understand is that that actually isn't to do with heat damage. So if you're travelling today, good luck. Don't forget, of course, though, while the heat might be over and causing problems, less of those. Next week, of course, we've got strike action to come. One very good piece of news to end on, though. There was going to be a strike by refuelling staff at Heathrow starting today for 3 days. Heathrow, of course, has been sort of plagued by problems. They put a cap on how many passengers can travel every summer. Well, every day over summer. Well, that strike has been cancelled. So there should be less disruption than perhaps we were anticipating if you were flying today. And if you're getting the train, check before you travel, but it should be running.
Oh, we'll take any little bit of good news like that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Rosie.
Thanks
very much indeed. I like a train journey.
Yeah?
What I don't like are train seats.
I don't like seats in general. I don't like...
you do stand.
I'd like a bed. You know, it's the same on a plane. I want to put my feet up.
Have you ever, and I never have you ever used the sleeper going to Scotland?
Aberdeen, yes. As a child, we did it every Easter.
So you used a bed there?
Yeah.
I did.
Bunks. It was so much fun, except every time the train stopped, we woke up. You were lulled in this kind of...
That's the thing.
And then you woke up.
I did a train in Africa where I was filming for the holiday programme. And you're quite right, that business that you'd go to sleep and all the rails were obviously bent and warped or whatever. So it literally was the whole way. But I'm sure there's some train. If you've ever slept on a train in a bed, is the one you could recommend?
Oh, I did some good ones in Rajasthan in India. Amazing. Rajasthan. Really recommend visiting there if you get the chance.
But
absolutely the most beautiful place.
But I thought there's like 100,000 people on each train in India. You see all those
there were
pictures where they all
carriages
jump on top of each other.
Yeah, it wasn't like that. I didn't
sit
go
on
any
the roof.
trains like that. The only downside of the trains in India is what is the tracks are used for by people sometimes. But that's a whole other story.
What?
Well, you know, some of the slums don't have toilets, so they use the train tracks to
And
go
does the
to
train
loo.
then go over and
So
then
we'd be
squirt?
arriving into town and then you'd see everybody. But
There's
the train was
nothing-
delightful.
There's nothing as bad as being on a bicycle or people who are in wheelchairs and things and they go through poo. You know, pick it up. I'm not talking about human poo.
Or a buggy.
I'm talking about... Though I used to do... in Belfast, I worked on the bin lorries, right? Yes, I've done everything.
You did not. As an actual job, or is it for a TV show?
TV show.
Yeah, come on.
Right,
Don't
2
pretend.
weeks. 2 weeks on the bin lorries, right? And they have what's called the brown squad, right? And do you know who the biggest offenders are?
Dog walkers.
Women.
Oh, come on.
I am.
If.
Right? So they all go out and get sloshed on a Friday and Saturday and a Sunday.
Accept this.
Well, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Belfast,
what do we do? What do
Belfast
we
City
women-
Council will have the facts there.
So what are we accused
Women
of
go
doing?
into doorways, right? Into doorways, and they relieve themselves.
No.
Men only have a piddle.
Eamonn.
I'm telling you facts.
27
I'm telling you
minutes past
facts.
and people eating their Weetabix.
These are the facts of life that people want to know.
Well, they're not
So
ladies.
bin squads and clean up people and people who take chewing gum off the pavements. I saw a man polishing pavements the other day. He was.
Polishing polishing
And then
other-
there's the brown squads who have to go and take that out of shop doors. I'm telling you.
Well,
awful.
I don't believe
Truth
you.
hurts. Truth
don't
hurts.
believe you.
Sport after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation. We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
7:30 breakfast on GB News. Still to come, it all comes down to the final two, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak. We're going to have an expert pollster. She is the chief executive of Ipsos, that's Kelly Beaver, who gives us all the latest popularity figures. And speaking of Liz Truss, the lady herself, 8:30 live on this very programme this morning. Liz Truss, 8:30. Could she clinch the top job? It's a big interview of the morning in around an hour's time. And you can join in any of our discussions. You can email us. You'll be doing that very well. You know the situation, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News. Paul Coyte waiting on the subs bench. He's got his boots on. He's ready to play. Back pages are going to be shaping up like this, and they all lead with the England women's quarter-final victory at the Euros. Toon to the rescue after Ella Toon's surprise equaliser. Then the Mail celebrates Stanway to heaven following substitute Georgia Stanway's late winner. And we go to the Mirror, says that England now favourites to win the entire tournament final. It's at Wembley, July 31st. Well, Paul, what about that?
Good headlines. I mean, like Stanway to heaven, Georgia best.
Yes.
I mean, they're all pretty good, aren't they? Well, I got to tell you, I was watching it yesterday, and obviously from what we've said from the newspapers, how great it all looks, it wasn't that great.
Okay.
As far as England were concerned, I thought Spain were really good technically. They're a fantastic side, and there was a few of the dark arts were coming out as well from Spain, but the resilience of England and Serena Wiegmann, who's the head coach, and she had COVID, and I just wonder that if she hadn't tested negative yesterday, whether England would have won, because she made some great substitutions.
Well, look, they're there. It's the result that matters.
It is.
Now favourites to win the tournament.
Well, yeah, I think they probably are. You know, they've got the momentum behind them. It was just, you know, during tournament football, as we know, every side will have a game where they're not quite on top of their game. But it's, I mean, I'm going to try and avoid any cliches, but it's how they come out of it. Mm-hmm. And Georgia Stanway, it went to extra time, and Georgia Stanway just hit this shot, and it was like Bobby Charlton against Portugal in '66. It was one of these. It was a pile driver, and it was almost like Spain just went to pieces after that, and you could see that they were getting frustrated. But it really is a fantastic win for the Lionesses.
Okay.
I think most people were thinking at 83 minutes, you know what, we're out of this, it's over. But they stayed with it, it's great.
I think it's Germany-Austria tonight. But listen, let's talk golf now. And Henrik Stenson, the Swedish player, I mean, he believed that he could still captain the Ryder Cup team and play in the Live Golf Series.
I'm kind of conflicted when it comes to the Ryder Cup, when it comes to the PGA, and when it comes to the major events. And I can understand
rival
with the I can understand them saying, look, we're going to ban you, you're not going to play. When it comes to the Ryder Cup, it's obviously Europe against the States, and then the more, and it really is a showpiece event, and the more players that are stepping away and going to Live Golf,
Europe's chances are.
I think it just weakens the whole tournament. Henrik Stenson was the non-playing captain. And for the captain to step away, but the thing is, when you've got Live Golf, they're waving 25 million quid or whatever. I mean, you've got some players running over £100 million. And the argument is it sustainable? Is it going to stick around? Is it going to be a rival to the PGA? There's enough money there to keep it going. But as far as interest, as far as golf is concerned, there's no jeopardy, because the thing is they're getting paid so much money they're not really bothered whether they're going to win the tournament or not because they've already got the money in their pocket anyway. So as far as Live Golf, I'm just not sure. And Donald Trump has even got involved. I don't know if you know Trump is now involved in this.
How is he involved?
Because I was thinking, well, why is he saying this? And he's saying, he said that all the golfers remain loyal to the disloyal PGA of all its forms will pay a big price. So he's saying all this, but of course he owns courses where Live Golf are going to play.
Yeah,
so,
of course, that's what he was saying.
As Matty Rice-Davis said, he is going to say that.
Bring me up to date. Football transfer news and gossip. What have you got?
I've got a good one, actually. Jesse Lingard. Now, this is really interesting. Jesse Lingard, who you know very well, free agent now, has left Manchester United. Looked like West Ham was going to be the best place for him because he did very well at West Ham last season on loan, and it looked like that was the place he was going to go. And now Nottingham Forest have appeared.
Really?
Now, well, the thing is...
they're back up into the Premier.
Of course, but... You think Jesse Lingard, desperate to get into the England squad, and he's a good player, and he did very well at West Ham.
Regular time.
But it looks like Nottingham Forest are offering big money to him. And I'm hearing numbers from 180 to 200 grand a week for him to go there.
But obviously they're offering him game time.
Well, they're offering game time, but I'm sure he probably would have got that at West Ham as well. So does he think, you know what, it's the old Live Golf thing. What do I do? Do I think of what's best as far as my playing career is concerned? Or do I go with the cashes?
Yeah, so. and sometimes, players, they've got families, maybe. I'm not sure what Jesse's situation is, but they like to stay around where their family is or where they're living as close as they can.
It's a good point, yeah.
And Nottingham may be that. Anything else there?
There's a few other bits and pieces. I mean, there's a new bid for Jules Koundé at Chelsea. Man City, Mark Cucurella, full-back at Brighton. Very good player.
A lot of talk around him.
A lot of talk, but the thing is, Man City, I think they're offering around 30 million. Brighton are thinking, they've got loads of money, they can pay a bit more. They want 50 million. So it's a 20 million difference whether there's going to be an agreement.
Settle on 40.
Okay, I think so. I think I should speak to you and get it sorted. 40 million quid. Done. Mark Cucurella off to Manchester City.
My friend, you're done as well. Thank you.
That sounded very final the way you said that. Thank you.
Because we're going to take the break, and then up next we're going to be talking about what's in the papers. We've got Baroness Claire Fox doing that, and Kevin Craig, and we'll also be speaking to Labour Shadow Justice Secretary right after this. Don't go away.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation. We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It's 7:38. We're talking about the Tory leadership now. It's down, of course, to the final two, and we're going to talk to Labour now about who they would prefer to face. Are they in fighting shape also for a general election?
Here's Steve Reid. Steve is the Shadow Justice Secretary, and as you can see, he's shaking in his boots. Right. So, what do you make of the final two there?
Well, good morning, Eamonn. Well, I mean, the extraordinary thing is that after all the ruckus that's been going on in here, as the Tories have fought like rats in a sack, knocking lumps off each other over their record of economic mismanagement, we've ended up with two continuity candidates, both of them senior figures in Boris Johnson's government, and both of them up to their necks in every single mistake that he made, every tax hike that he imposed, and all the economic failure that they're desperately trying to launder their records about. So, you know, we've got two continuity candidates rather than the change that the country desperately needs.
Who do you think is going to be more of a challenge, though, for Sir Keir Starmer at the ballot box? I mean, according to Rishi Sunak, he thinks that if the membership go for Liz Truss, then you guys are going to be in power.
Well, you know, I'd love to have a general election as soon as possible because the country is crying out for fresh leadership. But it's not going to come from either Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss because they are both continuity candidates for everything that we've seen going wrong over the last few years. Both of them voted, for instance, for every single one of the 15 tax hikes that we've seen over the past 3 years. Both of them supported, came out on your show and other shows, backing every step of the way, the economic mismanagement that has led to this high-tax, low-growth economy that we've seen under the Conservatives. So it doesn't make any difference which one of them becomes leader in the end, because they both represent the same record of failure, mismanagement and covering up, frankly, for all of the lies and law-breaking that was going on under Boris Johnson. So the sooner we get that election, the better, I think, for the country, because then they get the chance of a real fresh start, and that can only come with Labour.
But Steve, I don't really understand what you're saying, because surely Labour's social conscience, social policies would also require high tax and low growth.
No, well, no. If you look, growth is the key here, Eamonn. So under that last Labour government, we had growth at twice the rate that we've had it under this Conservative government. If the Tories had grown the economy at the same rate that Labour did, there would today be £35 billion more in the exchequer that could be invested in public services without having to turn to working people to pay more taxes, not even a single penny. It's because the Conservatives have failed to grow the economy that they keep turning to people to tax them again and again and again. As I said before, we now have the highest rates. We have the highest rates of. We have the highest rates of personal taxation for 75 years, which is higher than under any Labour government since the Second World War.
OK, get that. But what is the secret, just finally then, to growing the economy? What was the secret that Labour had, or were they just lucky?
It's investment. It's investment. So my colleague Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, has outlined a plan to invest £28 billion a year to transform the economy so that we get the high growth that will lead to higher wages and lower taxes. But because the Conservatives choked off that investment, the economy has shrunk, and then people end up paying more taxes as a result of it. You can invest in the economy to grow it, and then anything you borrow gets paid back. But if you borrow to fund tax cuts, then frankly all you do is fuel inflation, which wipes out any benefits from it. I'm afraid the modern Conservatives are economically illiterate, and they've delivered for us this low growth, high tax economy that is fueling the cost of living crisis that is hurting every single one of your viewers today.
Steve, thanks for your comments, thanks for your time and analysis. Steve Reid is the Shadow Secretary of State for Justice.
We're going to get reaction to that interview, but also, more importantly, I suppose, analysis of today's papers. We've got Baroness Claire Fox and Kevin Craig back for a bit more of a ding-dong. They were very lively last hour. Claire, first of all, what did you make of those comments? Very interesting. I kind of concluded from all of that perhaps Rishi Sunak would be more of a threat to the Labour Party, because they seem to think that Liz Truss's fiscal policy is completely opposite to theirs.
I think that I was interested in what Steve said, because I'm very sympathetic to the idea that what you need is high growth and that you need to invest. And it is the case that simply concentrating just on taxes can feel quite narrow, But one of the things that nobody's saying, I mean, I hate to mention it, but all parties, Labour and Tories, closed down the economy for 2 years. I mean, I kept saying, you know, if you close down the economy for 2 years, that's going to stop growth, going to have a major recessionary impact. And I was told to basically shut up and put up, right? And this is an emergency, we need to do it. But I do think that at least a small part of the economic crisis that we're facing now is because of policies that both parties went along with. So I don't think we should see it as who's the biggest threat to. I just think at the moment the Labour Party are obviously, understandably, not in the spotlight. So all they need to do is just look at the mess the Tories are making. When a general election comes, and I hope it's sooner rather than later, then they'll have to fight positively make their own case, not just simply kind of make fun of the opposition. It doesn't work like that.
Well, I think Steve Reid is one of Labour's most able communicators at the moment. I mean, look, come on, Claire. You know, don't be saying that the Labour Party and the Conservative Party closed down the economy like they were both looking around for things to do. We had a pandemic. Let's not go back there. The NHS was in danger. It was a national emergency. What's interesting now is a discussion about future economics and who's best for the country. And I think the more of that policy debate, the better.
Now, listen, I just want to get in front page of the Times here, Kevin, from you. Oh, this is a good story.
It is.
This is a great idea. British travellers returning home will be allowed to skip queues for passport checks and walk through what are called contactless corridors under plans to use facial recognition at airports. Now, often older people are quite scared about facial recognition, but oh, gosh, yes. You know about Big Brother's watching you and they know where you go and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's a great idea, this.
Well, I thought viewers and listeners would like a positive story based on policy and real things as opposed to ding-dongs between candidates. And the front page of the Times, which have been picked up by other newspapers, as you say, plans out yesterday from the Home Office, facial recognition technology. Basically, if you register for this scheme, you'll be able to walk through on your return to the country. Even now, if you've got a British or Irish passport, you can speed it up with the e-passport.
Yeah, but that never works.
It does.
Oh, come on, the amount of times I've gone to places, it doesn't...
People are doing it wrong.
Yeah, I mean...
I'm not doing it wrong. There's always queues and I can name the airports.
She said that very quickly, though.
It's always because she, like my wife, sees me as some sort of imbecile. Sees that I'm sort of seven years of age. My wife treats me like a toddler.
Did you not say on this very show yesterday, I'm useless, I can't do anything?
I can do that. Yeah. I can do that.
Look, even for you, Eamonn, I think this is really going to be positive.
This is brilliant.
You don't have to whip the passport out anymore, and I think, you know, people should look at.
Do you know what you don't know with a passport? Is it that way round? Is it that way round? Is it that way round?
We have diagrams and arrows.
But this is really because one of the frustrations I would say that a lot of us have been feeling in recent months are the queues when you come back into the country. Right? It feels quite chaotic.
Awful.
And this is a specific, really good set of proposals to make that faster and easier. So. Good news.
And do you know what I'd also say? Those queues, which are inexcusable, you could be there for an hour, right? Or maybe longer standing. There's no water dispensers. There's no air conditioning, there's no fans. But see, has it ever happened to you, Claire?
Of course it's happened to me. It's happened to me loads.
Blimmin' awful.
But a little note of caution.
Oh, here we go.
Little note of caution, which is it's great to have a technological solution here, and people are getting fed up. But there will be job losses as a consequence of this, just to note, because one of the things that we're going to see is, and it's one of the tensions we've seen with the rail workers and with all the rest, is technology replacing human beings. That's not always the good thing.
There's so many unfilled jobs in this country. I don't accept that technology should be inhibited to protect jobs.
I didn't say it should. No. I'm just saying there will be a cost. I didn't say... Okay. I'm not arguing that. But I also think that facial technology, recognition technology, is rightly being scrutinised by civil libertarians. And that's like across the board, you know, that's everyone from Liberty to Index on Censorship to any Big Brother watch. Because there's a concern that the state having that power might be problematic, and certainly the police using it. So I'm with you I'm with you entirely on the fact that this is a great plan, because I'd like to see technology improving our ability to get around, and border controls at this level are causing problems for people. But it doesn't mean that you can't raise some of the problems that are associated with it.
Claire, give us the story. There you are. You're a baroness. You sit in the House of Lords. You're crossbench, aren't you? Or
Non-affiliated.
Non-affiliated.
Have you ever been affiliated? Just whilst we...
No, because I stood for the Brexit Party. That one thing that I did do.
Yeah. But anyway, you've got a story here in the Times, page 9, and the headline is Johnson's disgraceful plan for 30 new peers. Who says so?
Well, it's interesting because it's actually Rishi Sunak's allies who seem to be sticking the boot in, saying Johnson's going to stuff the House of Lords with a load of cronies and going to, it's implied, abuse his position as a departing Prime Minister. He gets the opportunity once a year or so to actually appoint peers. Now he's going to have his leaving list as well. They're comparing it to Harold Wilson's lavender list, where it was alleged that Harold Wilson put loads of Labour business supporters in. So I wanted to draw attention to this because I was accused, it's been accused that Boris Johnson did exactly the same with people like me and Kate Hoey and Gisela Stewart and Brexiteers in the last honours list. And there's a reason to challenge it, isn't there? I mean, I accept that. If the House of Lords is just full of appointees, non-elected, like me, yet it has a major role in terms of deciding on legislation, that's a democratic deficit.
You still want to abolish it, though?
Oh, I absolutely do.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the House of Lords...
Go?
Because I thought it was a platform. I mean, I'm perfectly happy to say that it's a judgment call as to whether you take something where you think it's... I went to the European Parliament as well. I didn't particularly fond of that. I think that, however... So there's all these... points that, Paul Dacre will be in from the Daily Mail, they're saying. Andrea Leadsom, who, let's be honest, might not do so well in any cabinet being offered to the is it? No, Nadine Dorries. Nadine Dorries, who might not get the prime jobs of the new cabinet.
Give her this as a
so they might get... So there's all this.
But, Claire,
so
can I ask you, is there room for 30 more? I mean, how many...
No, there's no...
How many peers are there?
No, well, there's nearly 800. It's the second largest chamber. It's in
800?
Yeah, but they don't all go, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, there's physically room to, because there's not. I mean, people like myself, Kate Hoey, and Giza, who I've just referred to, we're, as they say, working peers. So we kind of go in and do the work, right? But most of the people who came in at the same time that we came in, a lot of them I've never seen. Yeah, Ian Botham. I mean, some people might say Lord Lebedev, maybe best. But, but nonetheless, we haven't seen him. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, it's not like they're in all the time.
Yeah, okay.
It's just like an honorific for them, I suppose.
Kevin, we go to the Daily Star, and they're predicting, well, it's not exactly they're running a story which is talking about the end of TV. Says who? It's on the front page here.
And it's...
good headline, actually. It's good night from me, and it's good night from him.
It is, and it's a front page on the Star, and it's about what the Netflix boss has just said, reckoning that streamers will kill off traditional TV within a decade. Now, it's quite ironic this is coming out at a time when Netflix has lost almost 1 million subscribers, and it's actually going in the wrong direction. But the point is, which I think is really interesting, not such a challenge for award-winning breakfast shows like this one, may I add, but in general, this story is important about the change in habits in media consumption, right? Yes. I did a talk to some young people in Parliament earlier this last week, and of 20 kids between 16 and 22, how many of those 20 kids read a print newspaper daily?
Oh, it's depressing.
Right?
Nobody does. Yeah.
So the future for media consumption is going to be radically different. But I don't think TV's dead. I think people are just watching it differently.
Well,
TV is dead.
I think TV might be dead, but what it's being replaced with instead, people are consuming their news.
That's
now
why we're on the radio.
Yeah, we're simulcasting and we're also on TikTok and all the other stuff. But it is a bit tragic, isn't it? Where the quality of journalism is going to be...
Well, there's actually...
turned into a 40-second...
Well, listen, quality of journalism. I looked at a story online in The Sun today, and it was a bit of a joke that David Beckham bumped into Mrs. Ferguson or whatever in Italy in a restaurant.
Were you there?
But it wasn't Sir Alex's wife, it was Sarah Ferguson, right? So then under the caption of the picture, some 10-year-old quality of journalism is right, David Beckham talking to Sir Alex Ferguson's wife in a restaurant.
No. But I related to this, I don't think we're going to get to it but in The Guardian and in a number of papers, they've got this TikTok now the fastest growing source of news. And I think Kevin's absolutely right to say that the changing media landscape affects all of us, right? So there's a couple of things. Actually, it's interesting that we've got news channels like GB News. You know, in a way, you're not competing with Netflix, are you? I mean, you're a news channel and you're part of the News 24 cycle and all the rest of it. Fastest growing. But it's also, there is an appetite amongst those people who are interested in news and politics to have news channels one way or another. The Netflix question is whether people sit down and watch dramas together or whether the kind of bulk of programmes that we used to, I mean, you know, in the old days, you know, are you watching this at 8 o'clock? Doesn't happen like that, right?
I love that, the community of watching things and the appointment to view time. But also, I do love a binge watch. So and the binge watch. I mean, but we now, even when the BBC do a drama or whatever, you end up watching it on the binge watch, like it's a box set.
If you don't watch soaps and you don't watch game shows, there is nothing on TV, by and large. And I found myself night after night, last night, although my colleague thinks I'm a complete moron as regards to technology, I streamed from my phone, right, onto my television set on the wall.
By yourself?
By myself.
Wow. You didn't get an island?
Completely by myself. There's a little button that just shows you, and I was able to put YouTube, where I watched the whole history of a TV programme that I loved as a child called Lost in Space. Warning, warning, Will Robinson, warning. Brilliant. Dr. Smith. Did you ever watch it?
No,
Dr. Smith.
Not knowingly. But it's interesting you're saying that because I first of all, older people, older, not old, are learning to use the technology.
Yes.
But the point that we were saying about the TikTok news, we were kind of saying, I mean, we've got a different problem, which is that people get the news by headline. I mean, it's not just TikTok. I mean, when social media is your news source, then you're basically seeing clips all the time. You're not even watching the programme. And I mean, I've just been having a little row on Twitter about this programme. People going, GB News, and you think, and they go, well, I never watch it. And it's like, well,
tune in and watch it.
Tune in and watch it.
I am very proud to say that a lot of my education was supplemented by television. You can watch geography programmes, you watch science programmes, you watch history programmes. You can, you know, absolutely, and therefore, and the programmes are there. I used to say to my son, used to be doing essays on Second World War, whatever. I say, go to the History Channel, go to this, go to that. Would they? No. It's like, you know, nobody listens
Eamonn,
to
the one thing that I would say is like, the Academy of Ideas, we work with a lot of young people, do this thing called Living Freedom for 18 to 30-year-olds. And I recommend things like Radio 4's In Our Time, which has got a brilliant archive. Watch it, everyone, and listen to it.
You look for it.
So what we need to do as kind of grown-ups, it's not that young people don't want it. It's often that older people think the way to get in with the youth is to do a TikTok. You know what I mean? Like, it's like pandering to them. We should be saying, watch these classic programmes and documentaries.
Totally agree.
Well, anyway, I don't want to talk to you two anymore. You know, you three, neither three Philistines. None of you know what Lost in Space is. Irwin Allen Productions, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
No idea, but I watched the Mo Farah documentary, a bit behind the times, a week behind, but it was absolutely excellent.
Was it?
Yeah, tears rolling down my face. It's really moving.
But as you say, we all say, is it because it's not a shared experience, and it should be?
I'm dying to talk to someone about it. Watch it.
Okay. But have you watched Lost in Space?
No. I don't like space.
There are certain experiences we don't want to share, Eamonn, and I think that's a historic last one.
It's a bit niche, Eamonn.
A bit niche.
It's not a bit niche. It was the most popular kids' programme in the 70s.
This morning.
Dear, forget it. Anyway, we're back. We're talking about the Tory leadership race. We're talking about lots of things. If you enjoyed and watched Lost in Space and The Robot and Will Robinson and most of all, Dr. Smith, let us know all about it after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not
part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The race for number 10 comes down to two as Sunak and Truss make it to the final round.
A very good morning to you. It is 8 o'clock. It's Thursday, the 21st of July, I think. You're listening to and watching Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster. Of that, I'm certain.
Yes, very good to have you on board. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Leading the news, it's politics. And the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, and the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, they're through to the final round of the Conservative leadership election. They'll go head-to-head in an attempt to win over the party membership. I'm going to be speaking to Liz Truss live on this programme at 8:30 this morning.
Meanwhile, an inquiry has been launched by the Cabinet Office into claims that the Civil Service leaked stories to damage Penny Mordaunt. It comes after papers drawn up by civil servants were published in the Sunday Times.
Train journeys will be disrupted again today due to repairs taking place on tracks in the wake of the unprecedented heatwave. The record high temperatures caused the steel tracks to buckle, leading to delays and cancellations.
And remember, you can join in any of our conversations. Email us, gbnews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews. Send us your thoughts. What would you like us to ask Liz Truss at 8:30?
So, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss will now go head-to-head in the contest to become the next Prime Minister.
It comes after Penny Mordaunt was eliminated yesterday from the race after receiving the fewest votes in the final MP's ballot.
So, what happens next? Let's go to our reporter, Paul Hawkins, who'll explain.
The numbers of votes cast for each candidate is as follows. Mordaunt, 105. Sunak, 137. Truss, 113. Therefore, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss will be the candidates going forward to a final ballot of Conservative Party members.
Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will slug it out to be the next Conservative leader and your Prime Minister. It's the final round of voting, and now it goes to the party members, not just the MPs. Over the next 6 weeks, expect lots of campaigning, interviews, several hustings, and at least one televised debate. And before you think about becoming a member to get a vote, don't bother. You can only vote if you've been a member for 3 months. If that's you, then from August the 1st, you'll start to receive a ballot pack with instructions on how to vote, either by post or online. The recommended way, which also uses special codes to make sure the vote is secure. If you're on holiday, don't worry. The party says you can apply for an email to be sent to you with the codes so you can apply online. So how many Conservative members are there? Well, the official number isn't known, but at the last leadership election in 2019, there were around 160,000 members. Insiders say that number is likely to have grown a bit, but it'll still be less than 0.5% of the electorate deciding who the next PM is. They've got until 5 p.m. on Friday, the 2nd of September to vote. The winner, their party leader, and the UK's next Prime Minister will be announced on Monday, the 5th of September.
Well, let's now speak to the Chief Executive of Ipsos in Britain. That's Kelly Beaver, as well as former Home Office Minister Norman Baker. We welcome you both for this. Kelly, you've done a lot of research into what the electability, the favourability of these candidates. What are your conclusions?
Well, so obviously it's down to this very small group of members at this point. But when they are voting, they do.
So we're talking about 200,000, as I understand it.
Somewhere between 160,000 and 200,000 in that kind of realm, who are going to make a decision on behalf of the electorate about who the next Prime Minister should be. And they will be thinking, yes, what does this mean for me? But they should also be thinking about, will this candidate be electable amongst the rest of the general public? So we do ask the general public what they think of Rishi Sunak and what they think of Liz Truss. How favourable are they to them as candidates for PM at this point in time? And the data that we have is showing that around 1 in 5 would say they're favourable to Rishi Sunak or to Liz Truss. Rishi slightly higher in percentage terms. But to be honest, that isn't very high in terms of favourability at this point in time.
But if we look at the deep blue line
Yes.
there, that's Conservative voters or people who voted Conservative at the last. Yeah.
Yes.
And again, nothing much to choose between the two of them.
There's not at this point in time. And I think what that tells you is whilst the membership vote, if you look at the just that 200,000-ish who are going to make this vote, their vote's been very volatile over this campaign to date. Liz Truss is coming out top within that small membership group. But we've got 6 weeks of campaigning on the ground, and that group will be wondering what will the rest of the general public make of them. And at this point, amongst the general public, there's still a lot of work to do to make it any kind of determination on who people are more favourable about.
All to play for, as they say in sport. And when you look at what the issues are that will matter not just to Conservative Party voters but to the wider electorate, what's the differences there and what are the subjects that they really probably need to be focusing on in those hustings in the next few weeks?
Some of these things are not going to be a surprise to you. The cost of living is a big issue. We've been tracking what matters to the British public over the last 50 years, and we've never seen the issue of inflation and cost of living reach the high point that it is today. So that is the top concern. But just beneath that, you have public services and what is being done to invest and look after public services.
Well, now this is a very, very interesting one because by cutting taxes, I suppose Liz Truss is saying, I'm not interested in public services or I'm going to cut back the great mass of public services, but yet that seems to matter an awful lot to people.
It does amongst the general public, and there's going to be this key balance that each of the candidates will have to strike between some really quick wins on cost of living, because the public will need to see something this autumn, but not detracting from the effort going into public services. Interestingly, for the Conservative voters who voted Conservative in 2019, their second answer isn't public services. Their second answer is immigration and border control.
Oh, come to that in a second.
There are very different.
Norman, you're listening there. You're waiting on the wings, just listening to all of this. Do you know what? Public services. There's certain things. It's like a lot of things. You miss it when it's gone. Suddenly, the fire brigade are the heroes this week. They're called into action. We needed them this week. My next question is, did they have the equipment they need? Do they have the manpower that they need? Are they funded to the level they need? And, if you want, and if we're going to get this weather recurring, you've got to fund people like this.
There is a certain level of funding for public services that you cannot dip below.
Right.
And we are, if not very close to already below it, in my view. Local councils have been stretched to the limit. Whatever colour they are, whatever party runs a local council. You look at this with the what used to be called bed blocking, or an unfavourable term, of people not being able to be discharged from hospital because there's no place for social services to put them to, and therefore there's queues of ambulances, all feeds back. You look at the situation with, as you just mentioned, the fire brigade, which is funded by local councils. And I know in my own area they haven't got the equipment they would actually like, the perfect equipment they've got for their own activities. But we're going to see more reliance on these people. And when we had COVID, of course, you realised who was important in society. It wasn't the people pushing bits of paper in the City of London. It was the people who emptied the bins, people who ran the buses, people who were in the hospitals.
So with all of that in mind, who do you think is the most likely candidate of the final two to address that? Because we've had criticism from Labour this morning that these are just continuity candidates who've been involved in the previous cabinet and the record of the previous cabinet and will just continue more of the same.
Well, look, I mean, people say what they want to say. Labour will obviously take the opportunity to bash the Tories, and the Tories have been left in plenty of ammunition, to be perfectly honest, in the last few weeks to do that. You'll have the Daily Mail, which is saying that Liz Truss is a perfect person. The Times saying that Rishi Sunak's a perfect person. They seem to be not reporting the news but putting their own opinions in the papers these days, but there we are. But at the end of the day, the Tory party membership, which has been said, is a very, very small percentage of the population choosing a Prime Minister. I think many people will find it very strange that the Prime Minister is chosen by 0.5% of the population. It's almost like a dysfunctional developing country.
But would you prefer to see a sort of primary system like they have in the States, or alternatively a snap election, big mandatory after membership?
I think a general election would be a more honest way of dealing with it, to be honest with you, because people can then weigh up everything in the balance, which they cannot do. And the Tory party membership, I have to say, historically, I don't know whether this is a common point of agreement or not, seems to choose the person that appeals to their heart rather than to their head. They don't always think about what's best for the country. They'll think about what is most in line with their own particular beliefs. So, for example, they chose Michael Howard when clearly Ken Clarke would have been a more sensible candidate in terms of winning elections.
Kelly, Norman was talking there about what really matters to people. And when we look at your list and we look at your polling, completely disproportionate to the amount of media time and newspaper coverage that it gets are transgender issues and transgender rights. And this is me just reflecting the polls, people don't really care. They might think, oh, that's very unfortunate, that's very nice, but stop putting it at the top of the political agenda.
I think one of the challenges that we hear about in politics is the culture wars debate and a lot of the terminology around that. And unfortunately, the transgender debate falls within that kind of category. It's not actually a top concern for the British public at large, but it does get, as you say, inordinate airtime. What matters to the public are some of those issues we covered earlier, but also, interestingly, the background characteristics. A small number of background characteristics, when we test them, do make a difference as well. Things like whether people are perceived to be upper class or to have a privileged upbringing. That seemed to be a disadvantage to the candidates, and advantages having a previous role in public service or indeed in business there seem to be an advantages. Whereas a lot of other background characteristics, we don't really see any difference play in the public at all.
So, and a lot of that is targeted at Rishi Sunak, isn't it? When people look about a privileged background, whether the man had or hadn't, and he will debate that. That seems to be a bone of contention.
I think it will be something that he will need to be careful about managing throughout the course of the next 6 weeks, and obviously should he become Prime Minister. But the key thing that we also, so a bit about their personal characteristics, the policy issues that they're able to focus on, what will be critical in shifting the public attitudes is a real clear delivery plan, because there's a lack of faith currently in the government's ability to deliver, competence of delivery, trust and integrity. And those are things that people are looking for across the board.
And do you think that, certainly with Liz Truss and with Rishi Sunak, both of them have a record that people can quite clearly check? So do you think that sort of deliverability is quite easy for them to sort of refer back to and have their record, accountable to?
They can refer back. Obviously, they have different jobs in government, and therefore you can't exactly measure one against the other, because Liz Truss didn't have the same financial responsibility that Rishi did as Chancellor, and the same for Foreign Affairs. I think what's very important, and I hope this will come out in the debate the next month or so, is the reality of the financial position that the country finds itself in. We cannot have fool's gold. We cannot have endless promises of tax cuts and spending with no way of paying for it. I think Mrs Thatcher would turn in her grave hearing some of the comments being put forward by the Conservative candidates up to now in this contest. And I hope very much that we can get some reality built into this contest. The other thing I would say, just while I got the floor, as it were, is that I just think it's very odd and perhaps slightly disturbing that this will go on for another month or so, which is going to occupy huge amount of coverage in the papers. But more to the point, it means that the Prime Minister, whoever wins, will have to come in on the 5th of September, which is just before Parliament reassembles. far more sensible if they've been all wrapped up in the middle of August, and whoever won can get their feet under the table when it's quiet.
Can't disagree
OK,
with that.
Norman, you'll be back after 9 o'clock, just giving us his view on how the day is shaping. Our interview with Liz Truss coming up in 15 minutes' time as well. Kelly Beaver from Ipsos, thank you very much indeed. I'd love you to do a poll on our next item that we're going to do, Kelly. Our next item is about, it's the latest dating phenomenon, right?
Well, we'll get on to that after our own GB News poll, which we've conducted this morning.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
I'm talking. Our latest thing, latest dating phenomenon, ethical non-monogamy, right? So this is basically people who don't feel they have to be committed to one particular partner or another.
There has been a generational shift in this, and I think you will hear about it in your next item.
Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it.
Right, so on that
Now,
poll-
Isabel, over to you.
Sorry,
Yes.
didn't realise. I thought you were segueing into the monogamy element or non-monogamy. Anyway, I didn't want to miss the GB News poll because interesting findings. We've been asking you this morning who you would like as your next Prime Minister, and you've been getting in touch on social media and on email. It's not scientific, it is just of our viewers and listeners, but I have to say 2,000 people so far have responded, and 82% of you say Liz Truss this morning. 18% of you say Rishi Sunak. We'll make sure we bring you that final result before the end of the programme. We might even put it to Liz Truss herself.
We will
who
definitely.
joins us in 15 minutes.
OK. Let's have an up-to-date look at what's happening news-wise. 40 houses and shops have been destroyed in London alone after record temperatures led to hundreds of fires across the capital. Around 90 families had to be evacuated from their homes. Major fire incidents also declared in Norfolk, Suffolk, Lincolnshire, Leicestershire and South Yorkshire.
The Court of Appeal will consider if doctors should stop providing life support treatment to 12-year-old Archie Battersby, who suffered brain damage in an accident 3 months ago. Archie's parents are fighting a High Court ruling with the support of the Christian Legal Centre, who say they're taking a stand for Archie's life.
England through to the Women's Euro 2022 semi-finals. They beat Spain 2-1 last night. That was in Brighton. Almost 30,000 people watched as the Lionesses came back from a goal down to win in extra time. The squad will now face either Sweden or Belgium. That's the last four in Sheffield next Tuesday.
Now, we've been talking about this for a while now. We've been really keen to bring some positivity into what quite often is a bit of a bleak news agenda and celebrate a People's Champion. And today, we were able to give the first award to our first ever People's Champion.
And that is Stephen Carter. Stephen, nominated by the guy he cares for, David Hodgkinson. And here's what happened.
Quite humbling. I just think people have said what I do for Dave, but to be honest, I'm sure he'd do the same for me, and anyone would do it for any of the mates. And it's tough watching your mate suffer like that, so you're just trying to make sure he's still having a good time and, you know, life a bit easier.
We're Blackpool on Friday.
Yeah, so I'll take Dave Blackpool on Friday, have a bit of a boogie and a few pints, and he's just trying to do things normally for him. You know, you've got to try and put yourself in the situation of the shoes on the other foot, and you just hope people will be there for you. But yeah, it's a complete shock. It's took me by surprise, really.
Well, you're the best of Britain.
Well, not only do you care for him, and you know, just to make it clear to people watching and listening, David has got motor neurone disease, and this guy Stephen is his mate. He cares for him, and in what way? I mean, how do you make it? How do you improve his life, Stephen? What do you want to do from him? Why do you do it?
Like I say, it's just because it's a friend, isn't it? And I mean, I've got to give a shout out to my partner as well, because my partner Emma's been helping Dave as well, and Emma was actually going through cancer treatment last year. Yeah. She's just come out with the all clear, which is great. But you see people suffering, and you just want to help them, and for your you know, your best mates, your partner, even for strangers, you just want to help people. I mean, I used to do runs for a local charity, Tiny Steps. Girl with a certain type of epilepsy. I just think if you've got that capacity to help people, why not?
Well, Stephen, you have that capacity. If you've got someone you want to honour, someone you want to say they deserve attention, someone who just makes life better for you, your community, in your street, whatever, let us know.
Yes, So many good people out there, and we want to really celebrate them. Right, after the break, we're going to be talking about open relationships. Really controversial subject. A lot of people probably offended by that, but we're asking the question this morning, is ethical non-monogamy going to be the new norm?
Why is it ethical?
Well, presumably because everydy's happy with it.
Everybody's happy with it.
It's not secret. It's not behind the scenes. I'm guessing. I've got no experience in this, just for the record. We'll have all the details after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Right, we're going to talk about something you'll never hear talked about anywhere else today, or any day, maybe. We're talking about ethical non-monogamy and polyamory, right? So basically, it means you can get it on with whoever you like. And it's up 400% for women, 500% for men in the last year. Many couples are looking to become, what's it called?
A throuple, I believe.
So a couple becomes a throuple.
Yeah.
Okay. It used to be called a threesome.
It's a whole new thing about throuple bits.
That's
anyway,
different.
what is the appeal of this trend, and is it here to stay? Let's talk some more about all of this with people who know much more about it than we do. They are the polyamorous mindset coach Ray Michelson and the dating expert Luke Smith. Very good morning to both of you.
So, Ray, what is a polyamorous mindset coach? Is that you getting people in the mood to take this? Step. So you're basically saying you may have thought about this. I mean, if you're in a boring, dull relationship or whatever it is, you may have thought of spicing it up a bit, and you're the woman to take them to the next stage.
In some respects, yes. Basically, I mindset coach on lots of avenues, but when it comes to couples, I've had couples come to me who effectively have thought about having affairs and things like that. And usually, if you're thinking about having an affair, it usually means that you're having feelings for other people, which usually means you are polyamorous and you need...
Are you sure it's not just that we're all human beings and, you know, you see someone attractive, you might be in a relationship, but you just think, oh, they're attractive. It doesn't necessarily mean you want to leave your partner or
Think of how hard it is for Isabel every morning, coming in here, sitting with me, thinking, you know, but I accept you're in a relationship already, but I do understand the temptations.
It's basically the whole premise behind polyamory is multiple love. So basically, we are effectively, from a historical point of view, genetically programmed to love more than one person.
I understand that, But how do you then find a partner who you go and say, do you know what, sweetness? I think we should be into multiple love. I think so you've got to have two to tango.
The part, I suppose, that makes it ethical, and that's my question to you, Luke, is because everybody has to be on board with this. This isn't, saying let's have a threesome, but kind of forcing your wife into it. Or actually, it can't be in married couples, can it? It's actually illegal to have polyamorous marriages, is it?
So, in terms of kind of the legalities, it's a little bit of a grey area, but we're finding that it's very much a trend that is on the rise. It's absolutely on the rise. People are being very, very open in sort of saying, I don't fit into one box or the other anymore. And I think that's a huge thing within love at the moment. I think previously, especially before COVID, actually, everything comes back to COVID at the moment. And that is especially true in love. We found that kind of people weren't so open to kind of discussing whether they are either polyamorous or whether they are monogamous or simply what they were looking for. And I think that the biggest thing is that now more than half of singles are actually being open about what they want.
Yeah.
And
see, I think it's
huge.
interesting when you talk to young people nowadays or dating. I mean, in my day, if you held someone's hand, you had to marry them. You may laugh.
I mean, that's
you may laugh. But I have to say that when youngsters now talk about, well, I'm dating so-and-so or so-and-so, but we're not exclusive. I mean, this is...
You get jealous.
Well, I get jealous. You're absolutely right. It wasn't like that in my day. But things have changed. And I reckon in 50 years' time or so, they'll look back and they'll say, in those days, they expected people to get married and stay with each other for their whole lives.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and especially generationally as well, it's really changing. There was a YouGov poll that was done, and 32% of those who said, yes, we want a polyamorous relationship were male, 19% were female. So it is more of a male-driven trend. However...
Does that surprise you, Isabel?
No, sorry, trying to suppress my tutting. I've got more to say in a minute.
But 41% of those that said yes were from the kind of millennial demographic. 12%, though, the lowest percentage, was actually from the baby boomers. So it shows that it
But you say that, look, I'm sitting beside Ray, right? Okay, yes.
I want to ask a question to Ray, because it seems to me that this is all about, fulfilling your fantasies or your urges or your human instincts. What about the important things about family, about raising kids? You've got a 2.4
Trust you
situation.
to be boring. Trust you.
Do you know what? You know what? It's important. What happens? You've got two small kids, you've got a family, and you decide, I'm going to bring another person into this relationship. I mean, there's a reason why traditionally people stick together as a pair, even once perhaps some of the lust has passed, because it's best for family.
We haven't encountered any problems as far as that goes. My daughter is very much aware that we have extra partners.
She says we. Now, Ray, she likes a bit of what's it called? Polyamory. Yeah, you like a bit of that, right. So that's very interesting. You're speaking from experience. That's what I'm just trying to say.
Basically...
But you don't have to tell the children, do you, really?
I'm very open about everything I do in life, because this is the whole point behind being polyamorous and things like that. You need to be open and honest. If you can't have that talk, then you shouldn't be doing it. Plain and simple.
See, if I was Isabel's husband, I wouldn't be having that talk. I'd just say to you, Liam...
Don't bring him into this. He will not like this
telling you, Liam, don't have that talk with her.
It isn't for everybody. Don't get me wrong, it isn't for everybody. But for those who it is for, you tend to... It's a bit like normal dating, like for monogamous dating. I'll say normal dating, no, not normal dating. Monogamous dating. It's exactly the same principles as that. You'll find somebody, you'll settle with them, you might like them or you might not. You usually find quite quickly and you'll have that discussion if that's what you're wanting.
Yes.
If they're not wanting the same thing, then obviously you go your separate way. It's like, for example, in a monogamous relationship, you're not liking certain things and it drives a wedge between you for whatever reason, you will end the relationship. So it's just the same for polyamorous couples as monogamous couples. So it works exactly the same.
Gosh.
Well, I'd love to know what our viewers and listeners think about all of this. Get in touch this morning. Tell us whether or not this offends you, whether this intrigues you, whether this is you. Maybe
this is
perhaps
the future.
You are.
This is the future, Luke. Is that what you're saying, Luke?
I definitely think that the rise in kind of open relationships and polyamory will continue. Absolutely. I don't think it's only to do with polyamory. I think it's actually very much across all kind of niche dating trends that people are simply being more open, and they're simply sort of saying, I don't fit into this kind of one box or another. I want to love the way that I love, and I want to feel the way that I feel. And being with one partner, that might not make people feel like they're sort of in that right kind of love for them. So it's all about kind of whatever floats your boat, and I think that's really what we're seeing in trends now.
I do think though that historically you just always see jealousy in if you love someone with all of your heart. I can be a jealous person, can't you?
Yeah, I think you're right there. Yeah. I think you're right.
And I think, how's this going to work? If you love someone with all your heart, how are you okay to share them with someone else? And that's when I don't know if this is ever going to really take off, because I think there's a very innate sense that you want to be exclusive with people.
Very boring, dead, dull relationships, Ray.
It's not even anything to do with being dead, dull, boring relationships. It's you have enough love to give your partner. For example, I'm married.
You're full of love. You're overflowing with love.
Exactly, yeah.
You want to share it. I have so much love in me.
But
that
again,
I want to
it's
share it. Why should people miss out?
It's getting the blessing from the other partners, and it's all about communication at every point.
Look,
if something isn't working, you tell people. It's not you talk to your other half, and you tell them it's not working, and you work
guys,
it out.
it's been absolutely fascinating talking to both of you. You'll have a great conversation. Folks, let us know what you think about all of this. gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews as well. Guys, we've got to say goodbye to you. We're going to say hello to the potential new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, right after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Time to go through the papers now in the company of Baroness Claire Fox and Kevin Craig.
Shall we start with talking about the leadership battle? As we await the possible future Prime Minister Liz Truss, we'll go, Claire, straight to the Daily Mail front page. Slightly smug head boy versus Maggie's sterner sister is the take.
I'd just like to point out that I feel very dull having watched that item.
Do you?
On polyamory. I thought, oh,
it's apparently it's the
not,
future.
It's not.
Well, it might be the future, but I'll tell you what, our inbox seems to think it's abhorrent.
Well, it's not that I think it's abhorrent, but I did think, oh, wait, it's not.
It's not for me.
Anyway, yes. So I thought this was a good centre page or something in the Mail, slightly, because it's sort of quite good fun, but it does indicate, I think, that neither candidate is particularly popular, even within the Conservative circles. And one thing I wanted to just note is that a lot of people, certainly in social media that I know, are both Conservative Party members feel disappointed it's been left to the MPs. They feel they've been, would you believe, too conservative in going for 2 cabinet ministers. And secondly, amongst a lot of voters, they just feel disenfranchised by the whole thing. They felt a bit disenfranchised by the fact that Boris went. Then they're kind of looking on. A lot of support for people like Kemi Badenoch. I wasn't keen on Penny Mordaunt, but other people saying, well, at least she's a fresh face. And then they kind of get these two. But that's important that then the papers are going to go through and hold them both to account and scrutiny. And just the only final thing to say is a lot of fuss about this picture of Liz Truss at 19 doing a Lib Dem speech attacking the royal family. And I'd like to say it's the best video you could see of her, because she actually is quite good. She comes over very well, very personable.
She's a very natural public speaker. When
indicates to you that the worst thing you can do is get formally involved in politics, because you seem to lose your spark. You know, actually, you felt like she meant something there and believed in something. One of the reasons why people liked Kemi Badenoch, based on an earlier conversation we had, was not just that she had communication skills, which she does, but that actually she had something to communicate. And I think at the moment what we're doing now is comparing style rather than substance, I'm afraid. But anyway, useful if witty or slightly disparaging.
You're a man, you know all about the images, you know all about getting the message, the advertising message out there. Both of them have been running a campaign in terms of an image for the past few months. What do you think?
Well, I think one of the advantages that Rishi Sunak and his team think they have, rightly or wrongly, is that in the hustings to come with Conservative Party members and the future ones on media, they believe that Liz Truss has got a more stilted, unable to cope with spontaneity style of communicating, and that they think that Rishi will be able to exploit that. Equally, however, he also sometimes can come across as slightly machine-like and robotic. So I think that's a big assumption to make. What is really notable is that it's all to play for. And so these hustings do matter. And media appearances, you know, it's a coup, you've got Liz Truss this morning. They matter. They really matter more than ever. And I think, great point by Claire, that old clip of Liz Truss saying she wanted to abolish the monarchy back in the day, presumably she's changed that position now, but she's quite natural in how she chats and untrained, if you like. And that's quite important.
But I do think, on that point about how she's changed and become more clipped, perhaps, in the way she speaks, I mean, is that a symptom of what we talked about a little bit earlier, about how everything is into sound bites now? You're almost second-guessing yourself if you're in the public eye, I think, and waiting to be tripped up by these gotcha questions quite often, perhaps by some journalists as well, that it's almost impossible for politicians to say what they really believe. And it's become harder for her to truly convey her message because she's almost walking on a minefield.
Yeah, I mean, high-level politicians are always worried about making mistakes, you know, and a clip that lasts forever. And it can be the undoing of people.
But there's also an element of cowardice in this. I mean, politicians can blame gotcha questions from journalists, and the other problem we've got is that politicians need to look the journalists in the eye and not care about the gotcha questions. But one of the problems is that they don't appear to have any big ideological principles on which they're standing. So they're playing around with trying to do well and be popular without thinking, this is my vision, I'm going to go out and fight for it and argue for it. It's all kind of playing.
But you could argue that Liz Truss, for instance, she has evolved over the years. You know, she's been a Lib Dem, she's changed her views.
Exactly.
And she has now grown, at whatever age she is, to know who she is and what direction
What I'm saying is she came over as very naturally convinced of her position then and less naturally convinced now. The Thatcher point is important, though. One thing that people forget about Margaret Thatcher was that there was a whole ideological wing behind Thatcherism before Thatcher existed. I mean, there were people, intellectually, the Tory party, or part of it, tried to come up with this new way of being a Conservative, and she embodied it. She was created on the back of that. I think one of the problems the Conservative Party have got at the moment is there isn't much of an intellectual hinterland. I mean, I think it's true of both parties. It's the period of technocratic, that's what I don't like, technocratic soundbites trying to get in, they've lost touch with their base. Therefore, kind of cosplaying Margaret Thatcher isn't quite the same as being somebody who represents a new set of ideas as a kind of challenge. So wearing the kind of dresses she wore doesn't quite do it.
OK, Claire, we'll say just for the moment, stand by, because we're going now, I think we're going to Westminster, where we can speak to Liz Truss, one of the final two candidates. And well done. What did it feel like getting across the line?
Very, very, very positive. We're now going into the campaign in the country. I'm very much looking forward to that and putting my case across that we need a bold new economic policy. We need to take full advantage of all the opportunities of Brexit. We need to cut taxes, and we need to deliver for all the people right across the United Kingdom.
And talking of taking advantage of opportunities, we're really pleased you've chosen to come on GB News this morning, because a huge number of our viewers and our listeners are, in fact, Conservative Party members who will decide ultimately how you do. We've conducted our own poll this morning, haven't we, Eamonn? Not scientific, but we've conducted our own poll, who they'd like to see at number 10 amongst our viewers and listeners. 82% behind you, I should tell you. But my question is whether or not that will work with the wider electorate. And, of course, Rishi Sunak this morning briefing quite widely that he thinks if the membership choose you, then Keir Starmer would win at a general election.
What people right across Britain care about is how we are going to help them with the cost of living, how we're going to unleash opportunity. And I'm somebody who can get things done in government. I've shown that I'm willing to push things through Whitehall. And that's why we need to cut taxes. We shouldn't have raised national insurance in the first place. We need to cut it now. We need a moratorium on the green energy levy to cut people's fuel bills. And we need to power recovery by attracting investment, getting new businesses to set up. So if we carry on with our current economic policy that is currently projected to lead to a recession, that will not put us in a good place to win the election. I'm somebody who can get things done, get the economy growing, put us on a positive footing. But I can also relate to people right across the country. I grew up in Paisley and Leeds. I went to a comprehensive school. I understand the struggles people are facing now. And I'm the candidate who can really communicate how we are going to change things and turn things around in Britain.
But you didn't change things, Foreign Secretary, if I may respectfully say. There were 15 tax hikes and you supported them all. But I would also say, I mean, the good news is 82% say she's our woman of our viewers, saying, right, they want you. And you say, we'll tackle the rising cost of living. Absolutely right. 2/3 of people, that's the main priority for them. That's the good news. The bad news is,
If I could just say, Eamonn, if I could just...
Yeah.
Sorry, if I could just say, Eamonn, on the national insurance rise, I opposed that in Cabinet at the time. I said it was a bad idea at the time. But I'm a loyal person. I respect Cabinet collective responsibility. So once the decision had been made, I was obliged to respect that decision. But I've always been clear it was a mistake breaking our manifesto commitment and putting up taxes. And I would never have done that if I had been Chancellor or Prime Minister.
Well, take that on board. Thank you for that. But I just wanted to say the good news was all going your way, and you're on the money with the rising cost of living. That's what matters to people. The bad news is, with cutting taxes and your view about cutting taxes, next most important item to people, this is according to an Ipsos survey today, is public services such as the NHS and schools. So here's my question to you. How do you reconcile cutting taxes with supporting the public services?
Well, the way that we're going to fund our public services, and I'm very committed to building the 40 new hospitals we've promised and continuing to fund the NHS and education, is to get economic growth up. The fact is we've had low economic growth for 2 decades, and what that means is a lack of opportunities, a lack of new jobs, a lack of new businesses. By reducing taxes and by taking the full advantage of all the opportunities of Brexit, we can get economic growth going. And for me, economic growth isn't just numbers on a page. It is about a new job, a new business, making sure the towns and cities across the country that we've promised levelling up to get those spades in the ground, they get those new projects going. That is what we can deliver if we unleash economic growth, if we get rid of a lot of the bureaucracy and the red tape that's still on our statute books from the EU. So as well as doing those tax cuts, I would have a programme of massive reforms to our economy to get our growth rate up. That will fund our public services in the future.
Liz Truss, I just want to ask you about something you said on Sunday night during the ITV debate, where you said, I might not be one of the most polished candidates standing here before you, and lots of comments been made in recent days about it. I think it's very often unfair, actually, targeted at women, and you may feel the same way. But I just want to ask you, people want to know a little bit about the person behind the face they've known. You've been in Cabinet for a decade now. Tell us something about Liz Truss, the person, something that might amaze or amuse us, and, whether or not that might be that you're going to get the steamer out and remove the gold wallpaper when you get into number 10, whatever it might be.
Like you support Man U or something. Something's going to do you a bit of good.
Believe me, Isabel, I'm not going to have time to be thinking about the wallpaper in number 10, because we've only got 2 years till a general election. We need to hit the ground running. We need to get on with changing our economy to really deliver for people right across the country. So I'm not going to be thinking about wallpaper. I think maybe the one thing people don't know about me is I do love 1980s music and I do love karaoke. So as well
What's
as
your
working
go-to
hard,
song?
I like to enjoy music as well. My favourite song is I Want to Dance by Whitney Houston.
Good tune. I love that. I can see you walking on stage to that song if you win.
But listen, if you do win, and whoever wins Foreign Secretary, would you rule out either working over Rishi Sunak or under Rishi Sunak?
No, I wouldn't, because after this leadership contest, the most important thing is that we unite as a party and that we defeat Keir Starmer at the election. And we need all our players on the pitch. During this leadership election so far, we've had fantastic candidates present themselves, Penny, Kemi, Tom Tugendhat, Rishi. And we need to make sure that those talents are being fully used as part of a new Conservative vision.
Now, look, for the past few months, whether you care to admit it or not, you've been doing well. You've been cultivating an image. You get certain pictures. There are those who would say, with the kitten bow and everything else and the tanks and all that, you're sort of trying to be aligned or making people hark back to Margaret Thatcher. But there are other people who would say, well, she's no more than a Margaret Thatcher tribute act. What would you say to that?
It is quite frustrating that female politicians always get compared to Margaret Thatcher, whereas male politicians don't get compared to Ted Heath. So I think we need to equalise the scales.
I think Rishi Sunak would like to be compared to Margaret Thatcher, wouldn't he?
Well, look, I think we all know what's been happening in government, and as Foreign Secretary, I've been somebody who's been prepared to take on Whitehall, to take the bold decisions, whether it's on the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, whether it's on the trade deals I struck, including with Australia and Japan. I've pushed those things through and I've made stuff happen. And I think that's what people are going to care about in this leadership election. We've got 2 years to deliver for people. We can't continue with having the highest tax rates for 70 years. We've got to cut taxes, we've got to get the economy going, and we've got to really hit the ground running in September.
Liz Truss, Prime Minister, does it have a ring about it?
I believe it does. And I believe that I'm somebody that can not only deliver the change we need and deliver the promises we made to people in 2019, but I can also go on and win the next general election.
Well, we very much look forward to talking to you many times over the next 6 weeks. Thank you for making the time to talk to us this morning. We really appreciate it. Foreign Secretary, possible future Prime Minister Liz Truss. Thank you.
Kevin.
Well, I don't agree with almost any of her politics, but she is the leader in this race. She has got a significant lead in the Conservative Party membership. She's warming up. She's relaxing. She even dealt with a freestyle question from Isabel, which is quite rare. So at the moment, she is the front runner and the favourite. And I always thought whoever got through, whether it was her or Penny Mordaunt, that they would beat Rishi Sunak because of where the Conservative Party membership is, and that she's in the lead.
Well, it is interesting because we've got, 5, 6, 7 weeks, whatever, to go.
Mm-hmm.
They will be put under the microscope. There will be newspaper stories, there'll be exposés, there will be... And people will just watch and they'll say, I didn't know, I couldn't make up my mind, but I like that person, or I don't like that person, or they're talking sense, or whatever it is. it's going to be a long time in politics, isn't it?
It is, Eamonn. And, you know, for me, the really interesting thing is that both the candidates for the leadership of the Conservative Party, what are they both talking about? I'm the person that can beat Keir Starmer. And I'm excited by the fact that Keir Starmer has made Labour electable and a real possible government, and that the candidates are vying to be the person they think can beat him. And I think that's great for Labour.
Starmer has made Labour electable?
100%. I think I heard you giving him a bit of a dressing down earlier on this morning. I think he's...
No, I just think, I mean, we talk about charisma, we talk about personality, and we talk about leaders and Boris and all that sort of thing. Keir Starmer, I don't see it. I mean, the party in general, and I do see people within the party, but Keir Starmer?
Well, I think Keir's really, really come on, and I think what people want in this country is honesty, decency. They don't mind being bored for a bit, actually, with a different policy agenda. I think he's refreshing. He's not going to fill the House of Lords with all his mates. He's got integrity, no whiff of financial scandal. The guy, Keir Starmer, offered to resign if he broke the law. Right?
Can I just
really good for on all of this?
Couple of counters. I mean, just on the... He won't put his mates in the House of Lords. The reason why the Tories are outnumbered in the House of Lords is because previous Labour Prime Ministers stuffed the House of Lords.
Lib Dems, Claire.
No, the Labour benches are huge. I'm just pointing out. I'm just saying they've all done it. I don't think that that's a boast. I think that, however, with going back to the Liz Truss thing, I thought she came over as rather endearing there. I mean, as it were, a really good interview, well done on GB News for getting it. But I think the biggest problem that Rishi Sunak's got is actually the smug bit, because that's the headline that's being used, slightly smug head boy. And I think when he tries to be authentic, he doesn't often connect. I mean, there's something about his patrician, you know, kind of like, I understand your pain, doesn't quite work. But what Liz Truss and/or Rishi Sunak's got to do is stop talking about Brexit opportunities and remember the Brexit energy. You know, there was some people wanted to shake things up and change things. That's why they voted for Brexit. It's why they then voted for Boris Johnson to deliver on that. So it's not... I think that if they don't grasp the desire for people to really change the way the country's run, then Keir Starmer, you know, will be looked at. Of course he will be. At the moment, those people who deserted Labour in 2019... that I know, of which there's lots, are not going back to Labour. But they're not voting Tory either. I mean, they're kind of disenfranchised and standing back. So what both Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak arguably have got to do, and I don't know they can do it, is bring a certain energy so that people feel that there's a new chance of making that shake-up happen. And they're going to have to do that by saying, because they're not going to do it themselves, what kind of a cabinet have they got? I don't know if saying all of the candidates who stood will be in my cabinet, but they've got to choose some good people to build a team around.
What do you think of some of the people that have been mooted in the papers this morning? I think Rishi Sunak, it was suggested he was possibly thinking about Steve Barclay as a chancellor for him. Liz Truss talking about, who was it? Theresa Villiers. Have I made that up?
Teresa
Coffey, sorry. Yeah, I can't remember the other ones. Kwasi Kwarteng.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not leaping up and down. The reason I was saying that was because I actually think that there are people like that we've seen, that people got really excited about Kemi Badenoch. I know I keep going on about her, but it was just that nobody knew her in the country. She hadn't cut through. Some people knew her in politics. And then people were saying, God, she's a breath of fresh air, intelligent, good communicator, new ideas, really cut through on a lot of things. I'd like to see what cabinet she ends up in. But, you know, you're absolutely right to say Kwasi Kwarteng, then people will have to look at the people they're choosing, yeah? I, at the moment, am not thinking what great teams they've got around them, but I want a political argument and I want a political fight. And in that sense, I am sympathetic to those people who say, I wish there was some kind of a general election, because as I keep saying, for me, what matters is that the voters get a voice, and they feel as though they're watching somebody else's circus at the moment.
Well said, Claire. It is crazy that so few people are deciding this, but there's the system.
Yeah.
Them's the breaks.
Happened for Labour as well. It's the same.
I agree. Well, don't get me started on the mistake that was. But anyway.
Yeah. Kevin, let's go to The Guardian, page 11, and we're talking about, you know, how people inform themselves into making a lot of decisions. And this is TikTok. As regards the source of news, the fastest growing source of news is on TikTok.
Yeah, and it's, you know, we touched on it briefly earlier, but it's so important that to think about the consumption of news in our country is changing. And just some statistics that this article, a good piece on page 11 of The Guardian, you know, worth reflecting. In the UK, 23 million users of TikTok a month, right? Averaging an hour and 25 minutes, 17 times on the phone a day. And I agree with you and Isabel saying earlier that sometimes it's not very satisfactory, edifying to just be having short conversations. Everything's got to be 60 seconds. Life, the news is more complex. But listen, Eamonn, never mind the fact that you've now mastered the use of your passport when you go on holiday. It's changing. And TikTok, you know, my daughters, it's a fight to keep them off it. But TikTokers in the States are being briefed by the White House.
Yeah. But, I mean, this is a significant thing. In relation to the Ukraine war, what the American state did, and you can see it happening all the time, is they contacted the top 90 TikTok influencers or what have you, right? And Instagram is also important. So I think we've got to know that this is the world we live in. I still would suggest that what we do is say, it doesn't mean the world's falling apart that people are looking at TikTok, but you can use TikTok, dare I say it, to say, here's a quick bite at something, go read this, right? So I think that what we have to do is to hold our nerve and not try and reduce mainstream news into TikTok format, but use TikTok to encourage people to read newspapers, read books, look at documentaries and so on.
I haven't seen, I mean, usually when I see TikTok, it's about people dancing and all sorts of things.
All sorts of things, yeah.
It's everything.
But how would they present news?
Quite often with subtitles or exactly that soundbite, sometimes with
60
music.
seconds.
60 seconds. They just sort of, if I dare say, sort of sex it up a little bit to try and catch imagination, lots of colours and movement.
But no detail.
No detail.
Oh, I mean, 60 seconds, you can't do it, but a little bit like a tweet. I mean, just because that's where I'm, you know, old, so I'm on Twitter.
At least
but you can do thread, but you can also do a tweet that says, "Look at this," right? And all I'm saying is that you can use it in that way. It also says, by the way, that people get their news from their friends and their family. I mean, actually, TikTok is only one of the news sources. So my concern is just that we, as adults, don't panic and turn ourselves into the TikTok. In other words, let's dumb down to TikTok.
Yes.
Don't let's have a moral panic about TikTok.
Yes.
But it can be a source of
economics usually win. And Kevin and Claire and Isabel, I would have to say, I actually lick my lips when I get a newspaper. I look forward.
Oh, yes, I know. Yeah,
have a cup of tea.
We're all news geeks, aren't we?
We're all.
But I mean,
it's an absolute pleasure.
It is a pleasure, and I sit and I look and I talk about my children who are more or less around their 30s, and I despair. They wouldn't know. They would never have newsprint on their hands. They would.
Yeah. Well, because it's so familiar to us, we do feel like that. But to them, these sentiments, as we all know, they pass them by. It's not what they've done. It's not what they know. They consume things just so fundamentally different.
Yes.
But that's changed.
Tomorrow's journalists are consuming it the same way.
Yeah.
When they're going to college now, when they're training about this, you know, and I used to engross myself in newspapers and whatever, they're not reading what I...
Well, we see it with kids
but that's
into newsrooms now, that they don't have the same familiarity with newspapers or...
Yeah, but that's where, you know, maybe because I used to be a teacher, this is where education matters, right?
What did you teach?
Actually, English, literature. Yeah, but I mean, this is where you would, you know, in further education, right? So, obviously, young people will turn up and they'll say, I don't want to read a long novel, man.
Yes.
What bits do I need to read to pass or whatever, right?
Yeah.
My argument is that you should say, read the novel. It's hard work. I know it'd be a bit boring, bit dull. The job of a teacher is to sell them that novel. The problem is that if you look at the trends in education, it's been they won't read the novel, so what we'll do is give them a TikTok version of it, right? And that's where I think that we compromise. So in a media, if you're going to go and do journalism, it's the journalist lecturers who should be saying, never mind all that, read the newspapers every day.
In fairness, look, books and literature are still being taught long form and studied in depth in school.
Sadly, there's a battle going on in English literature teaching, let me assure you, depending on what school.
My philosophy was in my day, and in your day, Claire, as well, there were what were called Cole's notes for all the novels, so they were abbreviated understandings. And often I would read the notes so I could understand the text of the bigger book. and then I revisited the book. I did it.
Nothing wrong. That's perfectly reasonable. But nobody's objecting to that.
And sometimes a film. If kids see a film, a novel that is put on the screen,
How you teach? I understand that. All I'm saying is that but you would be amazed. I mean, despite what Kevin said, sadly, because I do a lot of work with teachers, this is a constant row that goes on in schools, depending on departmental heads and so on. How you teach and making it come alive is one thing. But, you'd be teaching a Jane Austen novel, say, as a way of saying read the whole of Jane Austen or this whole period. You can now get to do English literature at university and not have done that. And that is the reality, and it's a sad reality.
That is a sad reality.
We're selling the kids short, is what I'm saying. They've got the attention span to deal with a novel like we did when we were kids. I didn't want to do any work either when I was 14.
That's a very gloomy assessment, Claire, and highly open to challenge.
Yes, well, look, but young people have got the appetite, the adults have given up.
Challenge again. Baroness, fantastic having you here. I can see how you would have been a very good teacher. I'd like you to have taught me. I had very good teachers. I can't say that. I should say.
I can see how you were a very good PR man
Pettigrew and
as well.
everybody else were all very, very good at teaching me. So there's no offence to anybody. She would be quite good too. Kevin, Claire, thank you very much indeed. Back after this.
Good morning. Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today, after all the drama of the thunderstorms and the heat, things are much closer to average. Quite a lot of cloud around. Temperatures about the average for this time of year, and not much rain around either. We're kind of between weather systems. The heat has been pulled away to the east, which is why it's much more comfortable out there this morning. Quite cloudy out there this morning as well, but most places having a dry start to the day. Sunny spells across Wales, southwest England, a good part of Scotland, and for most it's going to be a dry and a bright day. The cloud will come and go. Just the chance of 1 or 2 showers over parts of the Midlands, and particularly later on over parts of northwest England, maybe southwest Scotland, but as I said, most places are going to be dry. With a breeze coming in from the North Sea, some of the east coast will be a little cool. Temperatures generally close to those average values for this time of the year. High teens, low 20s across the north, maybe mid-20s further south. Through this evening, a few more showers possible over northern England, and overnight we'll start to see maybe a few more drifting up from the south. It will be a slightly warmer night, particularly across the far south, with temperatures perhaps staying again in the mid-teens here. Again, not as hot and humid as previous nights, but warmer than last night. Friday's details, well, it's a question of dodging the showers. Not too many across northern Britain, certainly Northern Ireland, mostly dry and fine with sunny spells. And there'll be some sunshine further south as well. But across the far south, we do need to keep our eyes peeled for thunderstorms spreading up across the channel. They'll be very hit and miss, but some heavy downpours are possible later tomorrow especially. Elsewhere, I'd say the showers will be pretty scattered and nothing too heavy. Temperatures just picking up a little across the south, back into the mid-20s. The weather looking fairly mixed into the weekends across the north. Plenty of showery rain around with temperatures close to average. But in the south, temperatures could start to pick up maybe back over 30 Celsius across the southeast on Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The race for number 10 comes down to 2 as Sunak and Truss make it to the final round.
Hello there, very good morning to you. Good to see you just after 9 o'clock on this Thursday, the 21st of July. You're tuned into Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading our news this morning. The former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, and the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, are through to the final round of the Conservative leadership election. The two will now go head-to-head in an attempt to win over the party membership. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss told us she can deliver the things the country needs.
I'm somebody who can get things done, get the economy growing, put us on a positive footing, but I can also relate to people right across the country.
An inquiry has been launched by the Cabinet Office into claims the civil service leaked stories to damage Penny Mordaunt. It comes after papers drawn up by civil servants were published in the Sunday Times.
Train journeys are expected to be disrupted again today due to repairs taking place on railway tracks in the wake of this week's unprecedented heatwave. The record high temperatures caused the steel tracks to buckle, leading to mass delays and cancellations.
Thanks very much indeed for getting in touch today. I have to say, folks, 82% of you watching us say you want Liz Truss as the next Prime Minister. And your views on this, a lot of you, even those of you who are undecided, think she came over very well during the interview we conducted. Steve says she's enhanced her standing with that interview. She has my vote at the moment. Derek says, I've just been listening on radio to an interview with Liz Truss, and I must say she comes across really well. She gets to the point with none of the idiotic bluster displayed by the likes of Boris Johnson. We need a well-grounded PM to get this country back on track after Johnson and Sunak completely derailed us.
Mel got in touch. Thank you to you, Mel. She says, well done in the interview with Liz Truss. It's the best interview I've seen her do because she was smiling all the way through. And Kevin says, Liz came across very well on your show. I will be voting for Liz. Just to say, we have extended our hand to Rishi Sunak. We're very much hoping to secure that interview with him for you too. I'm told it was the only interview Liz Truss has done on TV this morning.
OK. And who would blame her, really?
Now,
Right.
Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss are, as we've been saying this morning, the final two candidates in that contest to be the next leader of the Conservative Party.
Well, with us now in the studio, we're going to talk. There's the situation about that. But now we are going to something like a clip. There's a package. Here we go.
We're now going into the campaign in the country. I'm very much looking forward to that and putting my case across that we need a bold new economic policy. We need to take full advantage of all the opportunities of Brexit. We need to cut taxes and we need to deliver for all the people right across the United Kingdom. And I'm somebody who can get things done in government. I've shown that I'm willing to push things through Whitehall, and that's why we need to cut taxes. We shouldn't have raised national insurance in the first place. We need to cut it now. We need a moratorium on the green energy levy to cut people's fuel bills. And we need to power recovery by attracting investment, getting new businesses to set up. So if we carry on with our current economic policy that is currently projected to lead to a recession, that will not put us in a good place to win the election. I'm somebody who can get things done, get the economy growing, put us on a positive footing, but I can also relate to people right across the country. I grew up in Paisley and Leeds. I went to a comprehensive school. I understand the struggles people are facing now, and I'm the candidate who can really communicate how we are going to change things and turn things around in Britain. On the national insurance rise, I opposed that in Cabinet at the time. I said it was a bad idea at the time. But I'm a loyal person. I respect Cabinet collective responsibility. So once the decision had been made, I was obliged to respect that decision. But I've always been clear it was a mistake breaking our manifesto commitment and putting up taxes. And I would never have done that if I had been Chancellor or Prime Minister.
We'll take that on board. Thank you for that. But I just wanted to say the good news was all going your way, and you're on the money with the rising cost of living. That's what matters to people. The bad news is, with cutting taxes and your view about cutting taxes, next most important item to people, this is according to an Ipsos survey today, is public services such as the NHS and schools. So here's my question to you. How do you reconcile cutting taxes with supporting the public services?
Well, the way that we're going to fund our public services, and I'm very committed to building the 40 new hospitals we've promised and continuing to fund the NHS and education, is to get economic growth up. The fact is we've had low economic growth for 2 decades, and what that means is a lack of opportunities, a lack of new jobs, a lack of new businesses. By reducing taxes and by taking the full advantage of all the opportunities of Brexit, we can get economic growth going. And for me, economic growth isn't just numbers on a page. It is about a new job, a new business, making sure the towns and cities across the country that we've promised levelling up to get those spades in the ground, they get those new projects going. That is what we can deliver if we unleash economic growth, if we get rid of a lot of the bureaucracy and the red tape that's still on our statute books from the EU. So as well as doing those tax cuts, I would have a programme of massive reforms to our economy to get our growth rate up. That will fund our public services in the future.
The woman who would be Prime Minister, Norman Baker, ex-politician, watching that one, what do you think?
Well, she was more interested in the backdrop she had behind her, that's one thing to say, and she was smiling a bit, and she came across better than she has done previously on a human level, and that counts when you're looking at winning elections. Having said that, there was some reiteration, of course, of what we expected from her, the commitment to cutting taxes she came out with, and also the guarantee of better public services. Well, you know, from my point of view, that's a bit difficult to square, and that was your question, Eamonn, in fact, to her. It's very easy to promise both those things, but they have to be paid for in some shape or form. We've got a situation now where the country's been borrowing inordinate amounts of money, more than since the Second World War, because of COVID and everything else. The public finances are not in a good state. And it's a bit of a gamble, frankly, to promise big tax cuts when the economists around the place say that will be inflationary and when there's no money to pay for it. So to say that it's going to suddenly generate growth and that will pay for it is a bit of a leap in the dark.
Is it like a general election in the sense that whatever she states now is a mandate that she then has to carry out once she gets into office? Because could she just be saying this to please this current electorate, the membership, and then actually when she's in Downing Street and she realises I've actually got to balance the books, do something different?
Well, I think she is saying what will please the electorate, which is the 200,000 Tory party members. Let's remember that 99.5% of the population got no vote in this particular election, but she will carry it through. I don't think she's that cynical, and that would be very damaging politically, so she will carry it through. The question is whether or not she's making promises which are unwise in order to win the election.
So what's Rishi Sunak got to battle? What's he got, in terms of his opponent, and he's weighing up how he scores points over her, what's he got to consider?
Well, you know, this is head versus heart to some extent. I think what Rishi Sunak has put forward is, if you like, a traditional Conservative view. You have to balance about sound money, the sort of thing Margaret Thatcher would have said, as opposed to the aspirational element of what Liz Truss has been saying. And it is head versus heart. Now, we saw in the Brexit vote, for example, that there was a good economic case for staying in the EU, but there was also an inspirational case, if you like, put by those who wanted to leave. And in that case, the heart won. And I think the heart might win again here. So Rishi's got a big challenge to overcome that. He's got to persuade his electorate that actually what he's putting forward, which sounds a bit more boring, is actually better for the country.
I thought she was quite good when I put it to her, but you went along with all these tax hikes while you were there in Cabinet, and she was saying, I made my objections clear, but I had to go along with the collective responsibility of Cabinet.
Well, that's perfectly true, and I ended up doing the same thing when I was in government. You have to do that. I mean, you sometimes nuance it. When I was asked a question about why something was happening in government I didn't agree with. I would say, well, the Prime Minister's made it clear he thinks this.
Yes.
That's how I got round it.
Yes.
You know, there have been lots of criticisms of Rishi Sunak for, you know, handing in an undated letter of resignation because he'd sort of been planning it, and then this campaign, his domain for the website was registered, I think it was December 2020, and he was just straight out the starting blocks, wasn't he? I wonder if Liz Truss in Cabinet saying she was opposed to those tax rises was actually her also thinking about her leadership bid.
Well, maybe so. We don't know that. I look, politicians have got a right to be ambitious and they've got a right to aspire to the top job. So I don't blame either of the candidates for wanting to think ahead and aspire to that position. And, of course, if you do think that the Prime Minister is toast, as he clearly was at some point, then, of course, you've got to plan ahead and get your campaign ready. So that's fair enough.
Do you think things could get nasty in the next 6 weeks, personal digging around in personal lives? And, I mean, there's lots of stuff in the papers about how, you know, that it could be really unpleasant.
Well, the papers are unpleasant because the papers are biased for one candidate or the other. Some of them are. I know the Mail and the Express and the Times seem to me to be reporting the views of their editors rather than the views of the population at large or simply the news as it happens. So I think it will get unpleasant because the papers will make it into a bun fight. But, you know, Liz Truss actually likes 80s music. I mean, I'm thinking about my Paul McCartney albums from the 1980s. Is it Tug of War or is it Pipes of Peace?
Well, let's see what she said on that, because she made the comment and she told us what her favourite karaoke song was from the 80s. Have we got it, the clip?
I think maybe the one thing people don't know about me is I do love 1980s music and I do love karaoke. So, as well as working hard, I like to enjoy music as well. My favourite song is I Want to Dance by Whitney Houston.
You see, I think this is very important for politicians in terms of showing their personalities.
Yes.
People know what type of person they are. I mean, I've met Rishi Sunak. I found him very charming, very gregarious, looks you in the eye, quite fun, easy guy to approach. You can tell there with Liz Truss, she'd probably said, probably like to go for a drink with her and have a bit of a sing-song and whatever. And I think that's important.
This is important. People want someone they can relate to. And this is why Boris Johnson, who I've got very little time for all sorts of reasons, was actually very successful because he was able to connect with people. He's the sort of person you meet in the pub and have a drink with. And that is important in politics. So, yes, absolutely. Now, to what extent Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will up that and invent things about themselves which are desirable.
I think the difference with Boris Johnson is if you were in his company, it's a show.
Yeah.
He's the centre of attention.
Yes.
He's going to be making a show. Whether you actually find out anything about him personally...
Well, that's true. That's true. That's true. And I dealt with Boris, actually, when I was a Transport Minister and also latterly in the Home Office, and I saw what he was doing behind the scenes, and it wasn't very attractive, to be honest with you. He was much more gregarious when the cameras were there than he was dealing with people.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about Boris, can I just ask you about his hasta la vista comments in the Commons yesterday at the end of his last ever PMQs, a little bit of an end of an era, but do you think that's a signal that he might try and come back at some point?
I don't think he's quite written himself off, and I think he still feels aggrieved that he was removed. He doesn't see he did anything wrong, although he clearly did. And I think he thinks that he's been stabbed in the back, or whatever the phrase is he wants to use, and he ought to come back and save the country. I think he's...
Come back as Prime Minister?
Well, I think he's arrogant enough to think that, to be honest with you. But I think the chances of that happening are, you know, close to zero. No one ever comes back in that way.
So his chances...
Winston Churchill did, didn't he?
Well, that was... well, he lost an election and came back. He didn't lose the leadership of the party and came back.
OK.
And I forgot what I was going to say there. But anyway...
That's Harold Wilson, by the way.
You were also a drugs minister at your time. And it's very, very important that I think we talk to you, or we keep you here and get your observations on our next item, because after the break, we're going to be talking about the drug crisis in Scotland. Absolutely terrible situation. And we're going to be speaking to a recovering addict who has an explanation for the rise in drug use. Back after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation. We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It's coming up to 9:20. We're talking about Scotland now and its huge problem with drug deaths. Its highest number in Europe last year, but a report that looks to tackle the crisis is going to be released later this month.
Yeah, the Drugs Deaths Task Force will outline their strategy to help reduce the number of fatalities. We're going to go to our Scotland reporter, David Donaldson, who's in Edinburgh, to tell us more about this story.
A meeting here at Quaker House in Edinburgh where the task force, the Drugs Task Force for Scotland, is going to outline their recommendations. It's taken them 3 years to come to these conclusions, and we'll hear later exactly what they are. But of course, drugs in Scotland is a severe problem. They've risen year on year for so long now. We're up to about 1,400 deaths a year, the largest in Europe. So just to go through some of the figures here, we've got 285 suspected drug deaths recorded in the first 3 months of this year. This is similar to previous 2 calendar quarters, is rolling out a little bit, but slowing down a little bit, but the suspected drug death total is expected to rise. The areas it's affecting, well, it's affecting 27% fewer drug deaths than the same period of last year, but males accounted for 70%, which is down 2%. We've also seen an increase in female drug deaths, which is very interesting indeed. 86 suspected deaths of female drug deaths. 2/3 of the suspected deaths are between the ages of 35 and 54. So that's really the area that they'll clearly need to concentrate on. We'll find out later exactly what the recommendations are in this report, and we'll also be speaking to the Drug Policy Minister, Angela Constance, so we'll find out her thoughts on the report later today.
Why is the problem so bad in Scotland? We're now going to have a conversation with recovering addict and author Paul Bogey. Paul, thanks for good man. Thanks for talking to us today. Paul, you are a recovering addict yourself, but could I just ask you, mate, why is this situation seemingly so bad in Scotland, so much worse than anywhere else it seems to be in the UK?
Yeah, great question. I think that I can tell you what it's not. It's certainly not poor breeding, which many people seem to think. My parents were very strict. A lot of my friends who are addicts still today, their parents were very strict, or are very strict. One of the biggest problems we have in Scotland is boredom.
You could get bored anywhere. I know, mate, is it the weather? Is it the light? Is it, you say boredom there, lack of opportunity of things to do? Where were you brought up and what was your addiction?
So I was brought up in Edinburgh. My addiction was heroin. I became addicted to heroin at 18 and all the way through to the age of 25. I was integrated into a gang in Edinburgh from primary school age. There were drugs on the scene from the get-go. Tins of gas, sniffing glue, cannabis, alcohol. everybody used, not everyone, most people used those drugs because they were bored of a night time. The boxing clubs, there wasn't any. The football clubs, there wasn't any. All these things that we should have in society to prevent kids from becoming bored the way they do, running the streets and causing trouble. These things should be created, and the ones that were created have been taken away in Scotland due to lack of funding, which really annoys me.
Well, look, Paul, your own story, I mean, unsurprisingly, it ruined your life. You went down to rock bottom after becoming addicted to heroin. At one point, you became suicidal. But you did manage to turn your life around. You've written a book about your experiences. And, of course, what you can tell us is hugely important. What do you want to see from this task force report today? What do you think needs to be done to help people like you who've been through it?
Thank you. Yeah, this is the thing for me. What we've been trying in the past is not working. It has not been working. So why would we continue to keep trying the same things to fix the same problem? That, for me, is common sense. What I offer and what I have been offering for 2 years, I've spoke to Angela Constance on the phone, I've spoke to other MSPs, and, you know, I'm banging on their doors and saying, listen to me, I'm 18 years off heroin. If I can get to 18 years off heroin, I can go on to become a guardsman, stand outside Buckingham Palace, become a proud author, and I can do all this and do all these. And I'm visiting schools, I'm visiting prisons, all off my own back. Then you should really be listening to me. And what I'm saying is, I offer an alternative.
Which is?
That's what.
What is the alternative?
So my alternative is that I attended a course in Edinburgh about my mind. It had absolutely nothing to do with addiction at all. I sat on a course for 1 week and learnt about the mind, the subconscious, the creative subconscious, self-talk, how I view myself in the mirror as an addict, as a heroin addict,
Okay, well, that worked for you, and congratulations with that. I want to introduce you to a man in studio here, Norman Baker. Norman Baker was an ex-drugs minister in the coalition government. Heroin was his choice of drug, Paul's choice of drug. What would you like to say to Paul about that?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate Paul on coming through it and taking the steps he's taken to draw attention to his life and what that might be for other people in terms of benefits. But, you know, I also want to say that the way we have dealt with drugs in this country hasn't worked. I undertook a comparator study when I was a minister, which looked at other countries, and what the outcome of that was very clearly was that those countries that treated drugs as a health issue rather than as a criminal issue, not only was it more humane, but it actually got the number of addictions and the number of people using drugs down. Places like Portugal got far less of a drug problem, although the penalties are far lower. Those don't go together.
OK, Paul, we've got 45 seconds left or so. What would you say in response to what Norman has said there?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that the way that Portugal are approaching it, people don't understand that, you know, it's not a criminal issue. All heroin addicts are not criminals. Society deems them that way through education, but not all heroin addicts are criminals. Some people are just lost. Some of the nicest people I've met in my life have been heroin addicts. So don't put everybody in the same boat. Give everybody individually, as a human being, a chance, and let's try and work together to try and make them clean and break free. Like
Paul, we've got to say goodbye to you there. Paul Bogey, he's a recovering addict there, heroin addict. Thank you very much indeed. Norman Baker, appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for tuning in this morning. Thank you for watching that interview with Liz Truss we had for you. You'll be able to find it and watch it again online if you want to. I'm off for a few days next week, so you're in the company of Rosie Wright.
I will indeed be, and hopefully see you Monday morning from 6 a.m. Of course, it's Stephen and Anne for the next few days, and it's Tom Harwood up next. Have yourselves a good day.
Good morning. Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today, after all the drama of the thunderstorms and the heat, things are much closer to average. Quite a lot of cloud around. Temperatures about the average for this time of year, and not much rain around either. We're kind of between weather systems. The heat has been pulled away to the east, which is why it's much more comfortable out there this morning. Quite cloudy out there this morning as well, but most places having a dry start to the day. Sunny spells across Wales, southwest England, a good part of Scotland, and for most it's going to be a dry and a bright day. The cloud will come and go. Just the chance of 1 or 2 showers over parts of the Midlands, and particularly later on over parts of northwest England, maybe southwest Scotland. But as I said, most places are going to be dry. With a breeze coming in from the North Sea, some of the east coast will be a little cool. Temperatures generally close to those average values for this time of the year. High teens, low 20s across the north, maybe mid-20s further south. Through this evening, a few more showers possible over northern England, and overnight we'll start to see maybe a few more drifting up from the south. It will be a slightly warmer night, particularly across the far south, with temperatures perhaps staying again in the mid-teens here. Again, not as hot and humid as previous nights, but warmer than last night. Friday's details, well, it's a question of dodging the showers. Not too many across northern Britain, certainly Northern Ireland, mostly dry and fine with sunny spells. And there'll be some sunshine further south as well. But across the far south, we do need to keep our eyes peeled for thunderstorms spreading up across the channel. They'll be very hit and miss, but some heavy downpours are possible later tomorrow especially. Elsewhere, say the showers will be pretty scattered and nothing too heavy. Temperatures just picking up a little across the south, back into the mid-20s. The weather looking fairly mixed into the weekends across the north. Plenty of showery rain around with temperatures close to average. But in the south, temperatures could start to pick up, maybe back over 30 Celsius across the southeast on Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast.